Hello, this is the third part of Foxfire by NeonZangetsu. Link will be in the description. All author's notes have been removed between chapters. Also, any explicit NSFW scene will be removed. This part will cover Chapter 19 to 25. Chapter 19. Dreams didn't make us kings. Dragons did. But more than that, it took strength. Not just of the body, but the mind. An iron will set on victory at all costs. I wonder if she has such. Tilda, King of the Narrow Sea Father, was up to something again. Alicent could see it in the gleam of his eye, the curl of his lip as he scratched out another of his many letters before the flickering hearth. She watched him warily, as he no doubt watched her in turn, going about his work. Yet for all that, he did not look to her, speak to her, nor acknowledge her in any way, shape, or form. Setting the Hightower seal to the ink, he blew on it to cool it, once, twice, thrice now, and handed it off to a maester. She didn't recognize this one. It wasn't Mellos. Someone new, perhaps? This continued for the better part of a minute, until, at last, she lost her patience. "You wished to see me, father?" "Yes." Here at last, the hand of the king deigned to look up from his work. "You must see the king tonight." Her breath caught in her throat and she recoiled, stung by the very insinuation of such a thing. No fool she could read between the lines. "You must," he had said. "Not will you." It was not a request, but a command. He expected her to obey, diffident and diligent, as always. Once upon a time she had. She'd trusted him implicitly, believing he knew what was best for her. And perhaps he did, once upon a time, before ambition clouded his mind. "He tried to kill my mother." Rhaenyra's warning haunted her even now. She'd already given her dear friend an answer, for better or worse, and she would reap the fallout once she and Naruto returned. But it was those 6 words that tormented her more than anything else. She hadn't been able to sleep soundly since. Dark had been her dreams as of late, filled with blood and fire, of a great black beast feasting upon other dragons. She was not Targaryen, nor was she a dreamer, but these seemed an ill portent of things to come. Likewise, with the seed of doubt so planted in her mind, she could no longer bring herself to trust in father's judgment. Queen Aemma was a good and noble woman, loved and adored by both small folk and nobles alike. She did not deserve to die, be it by poison or otherwise. Were it not for Naruto, she most assuredly would have perished in childbirth. There was no rhyme or reason to want her death unless— Oh, father, is it not enough to be hand of the king? Must you reach so far? Choking down an instinctive surge of anger, she forced her slave to look her sire in the eye and speak calmly. "Meet with his grace? To what end? You might wear one of your mother's dresses." He returned to his letters, paying her little inquiry little heed. "They suit you." Father did not answer, and now Alicent did not dare to pry further and ask what he intended, because she knew. She knew. Something shriveled and died in her heart. She wanted to cry. She sketched a shallow bow, only for him to look up suddenly. For a moment she thought he had second thoughts as to this mad course of action. "By the 7, please." But no, his gaze fixated upon her fingernails, where she'd been picking at them, biting them, ruining them, deliberately. He stood before she could think to shrink back and held out a hand towards her. "Let me see your hands." When she refused, he grabbed her left wrist in a crushing grip. "You're the most comely girl at court." His voice dropped into a low, exasperated growl. "Your beauty outshines every other. Why do you diminish yourself?" He yanked her closer. "Stop!" She tried to tear her hand from his grasp, to no avail. "You're hurting me!" He didn't seem to hear her. His fingers bit down on her wrist, grinding the nerves together. "Yeah. You have relied on me these many years, and now, as always, it is the good of the family that we both desire. Everything I have ever done, that I will ever do, is for the good of this family. Do you understand? Whatever our differences, our disagreements, our hearts remain as one." As one? Did he truly believe that? And yet he would try to send her to such a fate? Why did her free hand hurt so much? Why had father released her arms so suddenly? Why was he stepping backward in such an unbecoming fashion? Why did he look so afraid of her, as though he didn't recognize her? And why was there a throbbing red handprint upon his cheek? Oh, very dear. Alicent balked at her upturned palm, belatedly realizing what she'd done. She'd struck him, slapped him, right across the face. She had never done such a thing. Small wonder he looked so shocked. He recoiled, surprised, swaying on his feet, one hand still against his cheek. But not for long. She sensed the anger long before she saw it flash across father's face, turning that regal, bearded visage an ugly shade of puce. He took a step forward, doubtless to strike her in return, and in a rare moment of absolute panic, Alicent lunged past him to his desk. From there, she seized upon the first thing she could find. Her fingers found the letter opener knife from his desk and brandished the sharp implement his way. "Stay back!" Father froze, one hand raised, suddenly aware of his own peril. "Calm yourself, daughter." "Calm?" She all but rasped the words at him. "How can I be calm? You say our hearts are as one, but they aren't. Our hearts were never one. I see that now. Rather, I have been a piece that you moved about the board, hither and yon, as you see fit, the better to elevate your station." He tried to speak, but she shouted over him, snarling him into silence. "And now you would haul me off the king himself, the better to see your bloodline on the throne?" Father bridled, made indignant by her anger. "Foolish girl. Who was it that brought you to court? Who was that ensured you met the princess? Became her childhood companion? Who has looked after you, cared for you, seen to your every whim? Now I would make you queen. Your sons would sith the Iron Throne. Would you desire it otherwise?" "How should I know?" A tiny hysteric noise fled from lips, peaking from gasp into a laugh followed by a snarl. "I always wanted whatever you impressed upon me to want. I never bothered to think for myself until—" Father frowned. Until Rhaenyra offered her a choice." Alicent bit her lip until she tasted blood. The pain centered her. "Shh, mustn't speak. Don't tell him. He mustn't suspect. If he did, he'd ruin everything." "Now the debt comes due," she said instead, trying to distract him. "A debt you were happy enough to pay." "A debt?" He lurched forward and she darted back, careful to keep the desk between them. "I have only ever made these sacrifices for the stability of the realm." "For the realm?" She shifted to the side, eyeing the door. "Or our house. No king nor hand has ever lived that hasn't had to forfeit the livelihood and happiness of a few to protect the many. Though I understand your squeamishness." Her temper snapped and she kicked out at the desk, upending it to send parchment flying in every direction. "Reluctance to murder is not a weakness." She released her mistake a moment later and gasped, but it was too late to take it back. At their feet, the inkpot lay upended, oozing onto the floor. In the light of the hearth, it looked like blood, as though it were but a harbinger of the chaos to come. The thought sent a shudder through her. "What murder?" Father bridled. "I have taken no lives." Alicent refused to answer. Ah! In a flash, Otto Hightower understood, or at least he believed he did. She could see it in his eyes. "The princess. You have allowed her to pour her poison into your ear. To believe this foolishness, to think that I would countenance harm to the royal family, is preposterous." Oh, but he was good. He was very good. He'd avoided saying anything incriminating. And yet, for all that, she no longer believed in her father, nor did she recognize him. Where had he gone? Where was he? Where was the man Mother loved? Where was the man who bounced her upon his knee and read her and her brother bedtime stories? Where? When had he been replaced by this cruel, cold schemer? She no longer knew, and that hurt her more than anything else ever could. But what she did know was thus. She lifted her chin and glared at him. "I don't believe you." Something fond flashed through his eyes. "You sound so much like your mother sometimes." Alicent scoffed at that. She would have been ashamed of you. The words seemed to take something from him. For a moment seemed decades older. His shoulders bowed as a ragged sigh escaped him. Once such a sight would have stirred pity in her. Now? She tasted ash in her mouth, bitter and burning. Stepping over the wreckage of his writing desk, she warily walked backwards and made for the door, careful to keep the knife between them. Only once she felt the handle beneath her free hand did she dare to come about and face him directly. Much to her surprise, Otto made no move to pursue. "Where are you going?" she sobbed. "Out!" So speaking, she wrenched the door open with all her might, darted into the hall, and slammed the wooden frame in his face with a resounding crash. The last she saw of Otto Hightower that night, man she once called father, was him stood amongst the wreckage of his room. Head bowed and shoulders hunched, he stared down at the bleeding inkpot. "As you wish, daughter. .0, 0.0. The dragons danced. That was the only word Coral's Valerion could think to give the battle as he watched Vagar and the cannibal ravage one another anew. Perhaps that was the wrong word for it. These two titans had continued to tussle for the better part of a day now, well into the evening. So much so that they'd been forced to withdraw most of their forces from the fray, lest they be trod underfoot. Their boisterous battle had already devastated what little remained of Triarchy forces on this island with brutal dispatch. More than once he'd seen fearsome warriors trod underfoot while others vanished into flame. It fell to them to pick off the stragglers. Now that the crab feeder was dead, the remainder of his army had splintered. Yet even with the death of their master, knew neither surrender nor mercy. Just as well, for they would be shown none. Alas, that still left the matter of the dragons. They could hardly conquer and settle the stepstones with those two going at it now, could they? Even now, Vagar was engaging the creature known as the cannibal in combat. How or why he had hardly no clue, but should either turn their sights on his men, they were doomed. Dragons were fickle creatures. Even should one win the day, it might well make this place its lair. And then what would they do? As though in agreement, a deafening roar filled the air. Vagar's anger growing to the point she no longer could hold herself back. In the end, a mad plan had been hatched the princess and soon-to-be prince to settle the matter once and for all. Blast it all! Where was that boy hiding? A pillar of light illuminated the night and smashed into the cannibal before it could retaliate anew against the Dragon Queen. As the smoke and fire died down, her massive body bashed into the ebony dragon where she slammed down into the earth, tackling Cannibal in the process. The two terrible titans tumbled across the island, causing it to shake where many a man cried out and fell over as if lost in their cups, tearing the land itself apart. Debris and smoke filled the air before a massive figure burst from the smoke, wings flapping with claps of thunder as she pulled herself higher into the air. Vagar was beyond furious, enraged by the cannibal's utter disregard of her and the sudden intrusion. A snarl was set upon the she-dragon's visage as she gazed down on her enemy, lowing with wrath. The cannibal snarled in kind as he roared a pillar of noxious green flame that collided with a pillar of golden red from Vagar, igniting the darkness with green, gold, white, red flame that mixed and mingled on darkest black. Heedless of the inferno, the older dragon leaped up into the flames, slamming his body into hers to strike her from the sky, slamming the massive eldworm slammed into the ground. The very impact rattled the stepstones, the very world, it seemed. Lifting her head up with a roar, Vagar looked up, only for the cannibal to stomp down on her neck, pinning her in place. He reared back to bite, and then Naruto lunged back into the fray once more. Corlys had already seen the princess's paramour fight thrice before. Frankly, he was no long surprised by the boy's boldness. But to leap up and punch a dragon, then whistle at it, that took guts. Hey! Naruto opped in place, waving a hand its way. That's right, I'm talking to you, cannibal. Look, I appreciate the assist back there and all, but you've had your fun. Now calm down or... The beast belched flame, forcing him to leap back out of instinct if nothing else before it turned aside, trying to focus on the recovering Vagar. Naruto, deciding that this would not stand, pulled his sword. Valyrian steel. He'd recognize the metal anywhere. He hadn't had that yesterday. Another prize from the crab feeder's corpse? Where in the hells did you get that? Corlys asked with a stunned look. It looked remarkable. Not a normal sword nor a greatsword, but a cross between the two, large near the hilt before flowing up into a deadly edge. It seemed perfectly at home within his grasp. Indeed, the very steel itself seemed to drink in the pale moonlight, rendering the flowing steel an almost silvery blue hue, as though it were drinking in the very light of the night itself. He'd undertaken many a voyage, but never once seen a weapon quite like that in all his days. Not once. To the victor goes the spoils. Naruto sang back, branding the blade upon his shoulder. Now then, how am I going to do this? He questioned aloud, idly thumbing a whiskered cheek. I really don't want to kill him, and he hasn't killed any of ours yet. Lord Valerian knew that tone. It was the same his son Lena used when he was up to no good, and likewise, nothing good ever came from it. Boy, whatever you're considering, I suggest you reconsider. Nope. Naruto smacked his lips aloud, producing an audible pop, doing this the hard way. Stabbing his priceless blade into the sense, he cracked his neck, followed by his knuckles besides, before retrieving the sword once more. Blade in hand, Naruto rushed forward to quell the two titans. Once more airborne, Vhagar snarled and roared as she and Cannibal heaved flame and destruction at one another, before they settled for hovering, if one could call it such, across from one another. Naruto charged ahead without fear. However, as both dragons were fully distracted by one another, the cannibal failed to notice him as came racing towards him at high speed. A single leap carried him into the air where, sword in hand, he drew it back, chambered a slash and swung. The blade found purchase in the bastard's lower jaw just as it roared, caused fire building up in the back of his throat to blast up and soar into the clouded sky above. Thunder crashed as lightning exploded above, illuminating the two massive creatures. Cannibal roared, swiping his massive tail through the air and ripping the ground up as it struck at the mortal, only to miss as he weaved away from the strike. Just in time at that, as a massive pillar of flame slammed into the ebony eldworm, causing it to roar in pain, before it roared his own flame in response, pushing Vhagar's own pillar of destruction off his body. However, Vhagar was a warrior who had seen uncounted battles. She held no equal since the time of the conquest, with good reason. Thus did she snarl and unleash yet more of her flame upon the crazed male, creating a much larger conflagration of energy that blazed through the darkness, turning the beach around her into a wasteland of flame and death. While it must be said that the cannibal held his own, to be sure, but against the Queen of Dragons, his might was lacking. The pillar of green and black flame collapsed as the female's flames slammed into him and sent him shrieking back in pain as the earth scorched underneath his body. The land beneath was rendered asunder by the massive body of the dragon as it slid through across the glassy wastes. Vhagar watched as Cannibal slowly rose to glare at her, almost preening as the lost black dragon seethed. Cannibal roared in fury, the hunger beyond comprehension, insatiable, unwavering. Whatever passed between in that moment could never be known to Corliss. But whatever it was drove Cannibal into a frenzy. His hunger must be sated. Vhagar growled in return, her massive wings clapping like thunder with each flap as she looked down at her adversary. With a roar, the two leapt at one another. Naruto launched himself off a nearby cliff between the two. Cannibal snarled as he spied Naruto leap at him. This human had dared ride him. He would be the first to die. He would enjoy feasting on his flesh. With a growl, the black dragon inhaled deeply once more and bellowed a pillar of flame at the blonde. It never reached him. Various leaps and jumps allowed Naruto to bound out of the way of the attack, under it, then around and over it, his speed increasing with each jump he made. Several more leaps moved him to the left and right, but always forward. And within moments he was upon his enemy, sword drawn back to cut. Corals realized his error before the boy could. Mistakes were made. That's the thing about dragon blood. It burns. Hot. At such close range and unimpeded by scale or bone, he got a faceful of it. Sputtering in surprise and pain, he tumbled to the ground and clawed at his face with his freed hand, desperately trying to clean his face from the scalding fluids. Massive jaws closed around him, only to bite into a boulder with awful crunch. Corliss blinked from afar, not quite sure what he'd witnessed. It was almost as if he'd swapped places with Cannibal's warbling yowl of, in pain eradicated that thought, as Naruto seemingly reappeared right above him, braving his blade in both hands and slashed down. Valyrian steel slashed into the dragon's back with incredible force, ripping free scales, knocking him off balance and slamming him across the island with a cry of pain as his body gouged out the earth. Rolling back up to where he could look around, Cannibal was unprepared when Vhagar unleashed bristling flames upon him, causing the beast to stumble. Naruto came around as the fire faded, slashing his as-of-yet unnamed sword into the side of Cannibal's face, only to grunt as a massive tail shot out and battered him away through the smoke and destruction. Once again, Vhagar struck, her claws smashing Cannibal back as she pulled away while the older Drake turned to snarl at her with rage. Naruto leapt around and batted the massive jaws aside and paid for it when a wing swiped him down. Before he could do anything, Vhagar inhaled, but Cannibal was prepared. Roaring flame at the female, He snapped his jaws down and bit down upon her foot and stepped back, planting a foot down roughly before he hurled the massive female away, where she crashed and rolled across the landscape, tearing it apart with her sheer bulk until she struck the cliff Naruto had leaped from. Cannibal roared to the heavens as he looked down on the two enemies he had defeated. Naruto was only mildly dazed from the hit, but not truly hurt, while Vhagar was winded from striking a large rock formation with the entirety of her body, while he himself bore an ugly gash. He raised his wings and Vhagar matched him below, ready to fight anew. To the death, Rhaenyra! Naruto shouted. Any day now. A new voice, a familiar voice, shouted in response. Vhagar! Umbus! Wait. Corlys whipped around so hard he felt his neck creak. Rhaenyra? No, surely not. She wasn't that foolish. Sure enough, he spied the princess on the battlefield, having flown in on Syrax. What in blazes was that girl doing? 0.0. Her heart was beating so fast. Rhaenyra could feel it pounding in her chest, hear it roaring in her ears, threatening to drown out the world at large. This was all part of the plan, she knew, and yet, despite that, she felt as though she might faint at any moment. Such was her fear. But she couldn't let it go on. That damnable rogue dragon was one thing, but her family could ill afford to lose a beast like Vhagar, riderless though she was. She was the very legacy of the Targaryens, dating back to the conquest itself, and to lose her was a wound she wasn't willing to bear. Taking a deep breath, removed the glove from her right hand, set her jaw and willed herself to focus on the task at hand, namely the massive worm before her. Because you see, Vhagar was looking at her. Those wild orange-amber eyes peered at her. Oh my, she really was quite large. Too late to back down now. Dimly she was aware of Naruto peeling off from her, the better to focus on the cannibal. Could he save her if she was set aflame? Would there be enough time? Or would she die? No. Bad thoughts! Don't think about that. Think only of success. Focus! Steeling herself, Rhaenyra held out her palm to the ancient dragon. Vhagar Likiri! Vhagar, be calm. Visenya's mount rumbled sullenly, almost incredulously. Her slavering jaws parted. Rhaenyra reaffirmed her voice. Likiri, be calm. Vhagar bared her fangs. She could see the orange glow of fire building down her throat. Rhaenyra snarled at the sight of it, voice peaking into an authoritative shout. Dohaeras! Serve. Vhagar reared back, perhaps startled or impressed by her tone. One could never be entirely sure with a dragon. The fire faded in her throat. Those bloody jaws closed as the battle madness faded from her eyes. Her long neck craned forward, and quite suddenly the princess found herself face to face with the old worm's mighty visage. Don't move. Do not flinch here. Do not show the slightest sign of fear. Moment of truth. If this was to be her death, let it be a quick one. She would accept no other. Keeping her arm extended before her, fingers splayed, Rhaenyra stepped forward and laid her palm upon Vhagar's, her snout. As such proximity, she could quite literally hear the dragon breathing, feel her every breath as she inhaled and exhaled with enough force to rattle her teeth. A moment passed, and when she didn't immediately lose her hand, she dared to hope. At length, Vhagar loosed a low rumble as her reward. When the dragon finally closed her eyes, so too did she, humming softly. She felt something settle into place in back of her mind, beside her bond with Syrax, an ancient, unknowable presence. In hindsight, the princess would describe it better. A feeling of weary serenity bordering on a deep sleep. For now, she released a breathless gasp, opened her eyes, and grinned. Success! She'd soothed her somehow. Vhagar's scaled snout butted against her chest, and in a moment of truly reckless abandonment that would leave her balking in her later years, she dared to press her head against the worm's snout and embrace her. The old dragon snorted grumpily and blasted her hair back, but made no move to try and harm her, much less devour her. This wasn't how to claim a dragon. This was something different. Acceptance. Peace. Understanding. Syrax trilled hopefully in the background. Vhagar utterly ignored her. Also a good sign. Laughing and a little hysteric besides, she dared to look Naruto's way. Now what? He didn't dare take his eyes off Cannibal, unwilling to break the deadlock. What do you mean, now what? I'm a bit busy here. You're the dragon whisperer, she hissed back under her breath, also wary of startling the wounded worm looming above them. You tell me, he shrugged. You deal with her. I gotta calm this guy down. Rhaenyra would have elbowed him if she could. Alas, she knew better than to make any sudden moves in this instance. She knew she couldn't claim Vhagar, no matter how much she might wish to. But perhaps they could get her to follow them and guide her back to where, exactly? She'd grown far too large for the dragon pit. She would never be at home there. It simply wasn't possible, but neither could they afford to leave her here. Perhaps she would be willing to dwell outside it, but then she might fly off again. Blast it all. They needed a rider for her, but who? Will you follow us then, when our work here is done? She spoke slowly, haltingly. Back to King's Landing. And then Vhagar lowered her neck. Hopefully that was a yes. It felt like a yes. Naruto, meanwhile, took his chance and edged toward the cannibal. What do you say? Truce? Cannibal grumbled and with a great effort spoke, a voice for his ears and his alone. I will not serve. He blew out a breathy sigh. Ain't asking you to. If you'd just listen, no! It screamed at him, drawing a flinch from all present. I will not eat that poison slop in the pit. I hunger! He was beginning to realize only ancient dragons such as they could communicate as such. Or perhaps it was the tentative beginnings of a bond they were forming. He couldn't be sure. Wait, poison slop? Did he mean food? Were the dragons compromised? What do you mean by that? You know nothing. I do know some things. He smiled ruefully and raised a hand into the air, fingers gleaming gold. Here, if you're so hungry, try some of this. He pushed out his chakra and forced it upward, into the body of wavering worm. It was a mad gamble. A desperate plan. It flinched once and glared at him, claws biting deep into the cliffside. What manner of sustenance is this? He beamed, pleased by its response. It's my chakra, my life force. What you think? And then, disgusting, more, he complied. Did you like it? There's plenty more where that came from. The cannibal gulped, growled low and deep in his throat, but did not bend. We will meet again. Snarling his threat, or was it a promise? The wounded dragon took flight and fled from them with frightful haste. Naruto reluctantly let it vanish into the mists. He was willing to accept a stalemate here. Theirs would be a battle for another day, 0.0. Someone knocked on their door. Emma heard it first and considered getting up to answer, then thought better of it. She was quite comfortable where she lay, after all. After a night of luxurious lovemaking, she felt more alive than ever before. Dare she say energetic? Had the poison truly taken so much from her, or was she simply rejuvenated from Naruto's healing? She might have to see to daily sessions with him once he returned. Ever restless, Viserys had departed some minutes before to seek out Vermithor and go for another hunt. Of course, those were just words. She understood, of course. She was rather keen to fly on Silverwing again herself, all the better to enact the plan he and Demon had shared with her. Honestly, Jose, boys! But the knocking came on again, a steady tap-tap-tap that refused to be denied. Sitting up, she donned a pale gown and looked toward the door. Come. She liked speaking like that, exercising her authority as queen. It made her feel powerful. Sir Arik had the night watch tonight. 'Twas he who opened the door, and there, standing just beyond it, Alicent? For it was Rhaenyra's dear companion indeed, and such a sight she was, wringing her hands restlessly, tears in her eyes. Wait, tears? Rising with a languid sigh, and careful not to disturb the little ones in their cradle, Aemma padded forward. What's wrong? She looked to Sir Arik and belatedly realised his twin-it Eric was present, shepherding the girl. What's happened? The latter of the two bowed their head, still keeping his hand on the girl's shoulder. Begging your pardon, my lady, but the princess tasked us with watching over young Alicent until her return. As she was distraught when we found her, we thought it best we bring her here. Ah, just like Rhaenyra to watch over her. Your Grace, the redhead hiccuped. I'm sorry. Her brow furrowed in quiet confusion. Sorry for what? Rhaenyra's friend warbled and broke. My father, he told me to... Aemma felt confusion as she explained, but only for a moment. Understanding dawned, and it was a most bitter one indeed. The Arryn in her wanted to be pragmatic. She could understand how it came to this, sympathise even. Her Targaryen side was another matter. She might not show it often, but she too was of fire and blood, and she was fiercely protective of her family. As such, she couldn't quite keep the pleased little smile from flitting across her face. At long last, the high towers overreached themselves. Their tower would soon crumble. The dragons would have their fire and blood. You poor girl. She pulled her into a gentle embrace. You did well to tell me. Come here. Alicent hiccuped softly and buried her face against her bosom, unable to resist such comfort. I'm very sorry to disturb your rest. Even now she apologized. Such a good, darling girl. Truly she was wasted on Otto and his ilk. Emma kissed her forehead as only a mother could. Nonsense. I won't hear of it. Tell me everything. Tutting softly, she drew the Hightower girl deeper into her arms, ushered her inside, and closed the door behind herself. Chapter 20. How many people will you sacrifice? How many bodies will you burn? How many castles will you crush to protect the ones you love? All the hurt and ruin you cause to protect them, the more painful it will be when you lose them anyway. It terrifies you, doesn't it? The idea of losing that girl. You would become a monster for her. Perhaps you are one already. You may believe yourself the author of your own fate as you wish, Uzumaki. You may strive for a better future. You may even think you already know your part in this story. You do not, because you have yet to open your eyes and see Dot. Shall I give you a hint of what is to come? You will burn armies to ash. You will commit terrifying deeds in the years to come. You will become a man that would make Maegor the Cruel tremble in his boots. Tilda Alice, a future scene, Crown. They rounded the survivors up and stranded them on a small island. All in all, it was a barren spit of sand and rock, the smallest of the stepstones, neither large enough to consider defending, nor small enough to be ignored by sailors. The anchor, some had taken to calling it for its shape rather resembled one. The tides were too unpredictable here and the caves little more than shallow divots in the rock. This particular isle wasn't even worthy of growing food or being used as shelter. Utterly unremarkable in every way, save but for one. It would serve as a most memorable example. The bulwark against future incursions. A warning, some might say. Beneath a cloudy grey sky, 2,000 screaming slavers, raiders and pirates were each nailed to wooden posts across the sand, with neither food to fill their bellies nor water to sustain them. They were the last living remnants of the crab feeders' forces. Once a mighty armada that numbers in the tens of thousands, a fighting force that nearly brought Westeros low, took captives whenever they wished, and scorched her shipping lanes for years. Once upon a time, they had been proud, defiant, unbent, unbowed, and unbroken. Now they were reduced to little more than bloody, blubbering beggars pleading for mercy as the last boat put out to sea. Naruto had a rather unpleasant view of it all, given he was on that last ship. It was necessary, considered it of vital importance that he be the last one out. You don't have to do this, you know, Kurama said. I can do it for you. No, had to be him. Somebody else might have gotten it wrong. He laid an idle hand upon the hilt of his Valyrian steel sword, nestled comfortably in his belt. Despite plucking her from the crab-feeder's corpse, he still hadn't found a name for her just yet, and watched his victims wail as the deck rolled and swayed beneath his feet, the sound nearly masked beneath the rising ocean waves, their pitiful pleas for mercy falling upon deaf ears. No mercy for the wicked. Why should there be? They were vile and heartless creatures all, with not even a speck of goodness between them. Evil men deserved evil deaths. Even so, he knew some scholars would paint him a villain for what he was about to do. They could call him worse than Maegor for even allowing such a thing. Rhaenyra had mentioned her ancestor in passing once, enough for him to make an apt comparison. So be it. Let them think him cruel or mad, some crazed dog who lived only to kill. He was neither of those things, because he was something much worse. He was rational. They couldn't afford to feed so many prisoners, nor should they. But neither could they simply give them back to the Triarchy. And so, to quote a wise being, ruthlessness is mercy upon ourselves. His borrowed vessel stopped a short ways away, leaving him in full view of the other ships, yet close enough to the isle to see the boiling, teeming masses within. He'd debated long and loudly with his Lord Corlys and Lady Rhaenys about their final fate. The sea snake wanted to leave them for the tides to take, allowing them to drown. Rhaenys offered to take their hands and send them back to Tyrosh and the Triarchy as a warning against further incursions. Tempting, but he didn't like the idea of sending so many survivors their way. Rhaenyra had suggested sicking Vhagar on them so that she might recover faster, and so they had, 3 days and 500 men ago. Now the old dragon was sleepy and sated and resting upon a nearby island. She probably wouldn't wake for the rest of the day. Execution by dragon was effective, but with 2,000 pirates to spare, they simply didn't have the time to wait. Which brought him to this solution. In the end, he came up with something less creative and altogether more final. Torture had never been his strong suit. He had the stomach for it now, but he just wanted these pirates gone. They had the stepstones to settle, and not much time in which to do so. He didn't like the idea of leaving Viserys alone, even with shadow clones attending him and there were other matters to attend to, not the least of which included Cannibal's cryptic statement. "I will not eat that poisoned slop in the pit." Were the dragons being fed poisoned meat? Something subtle, perhaps, not enough to kill them outright, that would be noticed immediately, but perhaps enough to stunt their growth. Syrax had been ranging outside of the pit for a while, as did Vhagar and Silverwing, while Vhagar hadn't been in years, but the other dragons. Rightly worried, he sent a raven to King's Landing the first chance he got. Not a day later, he received Viserys' reply with but 3 words: "We need proof." Proof, proof, proof! How annoying! He'd find some as soon as he returned to King's Landing, and then Rhaenyra stepped up beside him and took his hand in hers, diverting his thoughts. He glanced askance at her, desperate for a distraction. "Vhagar likes you," she grumbled under her breath. "I notice. Have you now?" Though he didn't look at her, he couldn't quite keep the smile from his voice. "She's been following you around like a lost puppy. It's honestly cute. Have you tried riding her?" She glanced at him askance. "Do you think she'd let me?" He shrugged. "Stranger things have happened before. You're basically a descendant of her last rider. Didn't your grandfather ride her?" "And Visenya before him," Rhaenyra confirmed. "I'm already bonded to Syrax, though. She'll never accept me. Maybe, maybe not, but she will follow you, for now. At least until someone claims EHR. Perhaps." From there, she leaned up to whisper softly into his ear. "Are you done stalling now? They're waiting for you." Naruto blinked once and looked up. So they were. All right. Time to focus, he supposed. His gaze passed over Corlys and Rhaenys, before finally settling upon the object of his ire. They had spared 3 prisoners here, leaving them bound and gagged, chained to the deck as their captives. They watched him with wide eyes, certain he would kill them. Corlys certainly wanted to. Despite all efforts to the contrary, Laenor, the man's heir and Rhaenyra's cousins, had taken an arrow to his shoulder during the battle. The wound had worsened quickly, almost suspiciously so, which suggested poison of some kind. He'd tended to the young man the moment Corlys made him aware of it, but by then the damage was done. The boy had fallen into a fevered sleep and not awoken since. Rhaenyra was more fortunate in that regard. She'd only suffered a single graze across her right cheek, and he had been both quick to spot and tend to her. It would scar, perhaps, but she didn't seem overly bothered by such a trifling thing. He loved that about her. Whatever her flaws and faults, she was a fighter through and through. And speaking of which, all right then. Their captives whimpered as he stalked past them. Rhaenyra followed, hands clasped behind her back, made mildly curious by what he planned to do. Good. They needed witnesses, else no one would believe what was about to happen here. "Can you really destroy an island?" He smiled softly, sadly. "Don't believe me! Just watch." With a shallow bow and a quick pivot, he strode forward until he stood upon the bow of the ship and flung himself over the edge. Gasps greeted him as his feet alighted seamlessly upon the sea with a burst of chakra, easily finding traction despite the shifting seas. He didn't miss a step, not once. Water walking remained easy as ever, but it was the first time any of his allies, save Rhaenyra, had seen him do so before. He didn't know it, but this casual act would only further grew his legend among the Westerosi and Essosi in the years to come. Tales of those who could walk across water and throw light would be told across the continents for decades to come. But that is a story for another time. Steeling himself, he took a deep breath and focused inward, keenly aware of the hull rocking beneath his feet, the creaking timber and steel, the salty spray of the wind upon his face as he gazed upon these soon-to-be dead men upon the beachhead. No need to summon another divine storm. He still didn't quite understand how he'd done that, nor did he think himself capable of pulling that off presently without a great deal of concentration. But thankfully he didn't have to, because he had an easier option available. He emptied his mind of all doubts, and then Naruto raised his hands, hardened his heart, and kept his eyes wide open. His body blazed gold, a pillar of light in the morning bright. He leaned his head back and basked in it. He knew he didn't have to do this himself. Sensibly speaking, it probably would have been easier to let Lord Corlys and the soldiers do the deed for him. He would have been happy to enough. Sage knew the crab feeder had given him enough grief already. They could have just burned the lot of them from Dragonback. No, he who passes the sentence must swing the sword, or in this case, fire the nuke. So he did just that. He heard the wind rise around him, felt it lift his hair and rattle the ocean beneath his feet. Someone gasped behind him. He never knew who, because Kurama chose that moment to manifest around him in all his great golden glory. No words were needed, not between them. Maximum chakra, maximum destruction, maximum effort. His jaws yawned wide and the blast formed within. One shot, 2,000 deaths. Unleash. This one wasn't like the paltry shots he'd taken at the cliffside during battle, fired in heedless haste. This held the full might and height of his strength behind it. He had but to will it, and it would be so. Day became night, became day, became night again as all he light rushed out of the world. Bijudama. A pillar of light ignited as their ultimate attack struck the island and ignited it, scouring the isle clean of all life, annihilating everything in a single cataclysmic blast. The pirates weren't even able to scream as they perished, because the very air itself ignited in their lungs, scorching them and their bodies away. He did not close his eyes against the light, but rather forced himself to watch, to stand by in silent judgment as 2,000 wicked men and women evaporated like so much morning mist. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. We must do what it takes to survive. When all was said and done, when the smoke cleared and the light returned, everyone saw what he was capable of. Of the island, only a charred and blackened crater remained, a deathly divot with glimmers of blackened sand fused to glass in places. He caught but a glimpse of it before he blasted it again, and again, a fourth time now for good measure, until only a great gaping hole remained. The moment he stopped, water rushed back in to fill the void he'd left behind to devastating effect. Behind him, Lord Corlys' ships rocked at anchor, drawn forward by the sudden lurch in the tides, but only for a short while. Their anchors held, and soon enough, the narrow sea swallowed the island whole, drowning it beneath the waves, never to be seen again. There, let them doubt his power now. His piece done, Naruto strode back to the ship at a lazy gait. Upon reaching the hull, he hopped back inside and sauntered over to Rhaenyra, keenly aware of the attention now fixed firmly upon him. She leaned into him for a moment, then stepped past him, moving to the 3 chained men on the deck, men who even now gawped at the gaping hole in the sea with mute horror. As he looked on, the princess laid a hand on their nearest shoulder, forcing them to look at her. "Tell your people what happened here." The iron in her voice made the man quiver as she spoke. "Tell them you live by the grace of Lord of the Stepstones. When the rest of your triarchy tries to come forward with notions of retribution or ideas about reclaiming these islands, remind them what happened today, when Foxfire split the narrow sea." The man nodded mutely. She looked to the others, but she needn't have. The poor corsairs bowed their heads and pressed their faces to the deck, unable to look at her. Not so Naruto. He'd never been more proud. The real work began now. Now that they had conquered the Stepstones, it fell to him to settle them and protect them. For that, they would need food, housing, and of course, people. That would take time. He'd held to his promise of conquering this place in less than a week. Keeping them would be another matter. Theoretically, he could rule from Bloodstone, but that wouldn't be terribly efficient. "Congratulations." Dimly, he heard Corlys step up beside him. "You've conquered the Stepstones. Good luck settling them and keeping them now that you've riled up Dawn." Rayans agreed with Velaryon, naturally. "My lord husband has a point. They're going to notice our actions here. How do you intend to safeguard against them?" Rhaenyra said nothing. She simply looked to him in return, awaiting his answer. At least someone here had faith in how he'd secure the Stepstones. How indeed? He'd put no small amount of thought into this, and in time an answer had emerged. He smiled. "That'll be easy. Don't believe me. Just watch. 0.0.0. Rhaenyra and Naruto returned to King's Landing suddenly, without warning. The Red Keep was abuzz about it, everyone rushing to see them. They'd been gone for a year. Nearly an entire year with nary a word from Rhaenyra, or Naruto. Alicent found herself swept up in the crowd of curious nobles, nearly tripping over her green dress as she was hastened to the throne room. She had endeavoured to be patient during Rhaenyra's absence, clinging to her virtue and resolve despite the whispers in the halls, the scathing looks sent her way, the rumours that abounded. It was difficult. No, perhaps those weren't the right words. Agonising, excruciating, humiliating. Yes, those suited her better. She had no allies at court now save the crown. In spurning father on that darkest of days, she hadn't simply lost his favour and protection, but that of the Hightowers as well. For a time she was alone and adrift, meandering without thought or cause as the court sneered at her. And for what? Defending herself? Speaking her mind? Taking charge of her fate? How it burned, how it galled, how she wanted to stick a knife in their eyes. Lady Aemma had proven a godsend during that time, as did little Visenya. Although there were times when Rhaenyra's mother very much reminded her of her dear friend. Do you know how to please someone in bed? How she had flushed then, her face red like roses. Your Grace! Emma had smiled at her as though she knew. It's a common question, dear. I could show you. Shaking herself, she tossed her head and descended the steps quickly, careful not to be trampled in the mad rush to reach the Iron Throne. A rather portly noble rudely shouldered her aside in their haste to push past, and in a rare fit of pique, she jabbed an arm into them, slamming the point of her elbow into their gut. The foolish fellow doubled over with a startled grunt and soon found himself unceremoniously shoved into a wall as the rest of the Red Keep barreled by. Worth it. The wave of men and women carried her into the throne room. A moment later, nobles and she found herself among them, slipping between the lords and ladies of Westeros to reach the front. From this distance, she could only just glimpse the king standing before the Iron Throne, crown upon his head, Blackfire in hand. She glimpsed Daemon standing at his right side, just past the Kingsguard, one hand resting upon the hilt of Dark Sister. Then the prince saw her and winked her way. Alicent averted her gaze with a huff. Such a shameless rogue he was. And there, further from to the throne, lurking like the vulture he was, father. He looked thinner since she'd seen him last. More gaunt somehow, despite his lofty station. Something cold and dark and ugly writhed in Alicent's heart at the sight of him. She studiously avoided his gaze, refusing to even acknowledge his existence. Even then she could still feel his eyes on her, assessing her for weakness. Doubtless he wondered whether or not she'd revealed his plans, still wondering why he hadn't been taken to the Black Cells yet. A year had passed after all. He might even be forgiven for thinking himself safe. He was not. The thought stirred a flicker of ire in her heart. Revenge was a dish best served cold. Hers would be colder than the wall itself. At some unseen command, the swarm of people suddenly split on either side, creating a corridor between themselves. Alicent found herself shuffled off the right near Daemon, as guards moved to protect the lesser nobles, blades half drawn, ready to unsheathe at a moment's notice. She prayed that it was merely some form of theatre on the crown's part. Surely Viserys wouldn't think his daughter a threat, would he? She heard Rhaenyra and Naruto long before she saw them, if only because they made no effort to be subtle. Someone was stomping. Probably Naruto. He was seldom the sort for subtlety, unless it suited him. Rhaenyra could be a proper sneaky girl when she wanted to be, but that once was a blunt instrument, smashing through any obstacle that dared impede him. They rounded the corner together and stepped into the room side by side, hand in hand. Alicent stilled a gasp behind her hand at the sight, nor was she only one to do so. An uncertain, excited ripple passed through the crowd of nobles. What were they doing, revealing themselves like this? They did not enter with an armed escort, which Alicent supposed was a good thing. Naruto didn't swagger, but there was a sway in his step. A stalk. For her part, Rhaenyra seemed inordinately smug. The fact that was even now wearing the Conqueror's armour, sans the helmet, was not lost on her. The next thing she noticed about them was the rest of their attire. They both wore black. Not in the sense of mourning, but as a statement. After all, black was but one with the colours of House Targaryen. Rhaenyra had Evna throw a mantle of sorts over her armour, Aegon's armour, the better to make it appear her own. Here I am, she seemed to say. A dragon rider, princess and warrior all. Make of me what you will. Squinting, Alicent regarded her with renewed scrutiny. There was something off about the way her dear friend walked, although she did not keep one hand to her belly or reveal anything, and yet... Wait, Was she with child? No, surely she couldn't be. Surely she was imagining things. Wasn't she? Naruto himself favored a dark tunic with long black trousers complete with a boiled leather doublet and a black cape flung over her shoulder. It almost seemed to shimmer in the low light, and belatedly Alicent realized it wasn't silk at all, but something else entirely, some kind of thin metal meant to look like fabric. What was that? All told, he and Rhaenyra matched. The sight sent a little thrill of envy through her, feelings as of yet unrequited. Look at us, their outfits seemed to say we are warriors. Know us. She craved that kind of singular strength. She was a warrior of the mind, not the body. And yet, wait, she noticed something else then, something she'd failed to see before. So lost was she in her own thoughts, these darkest of doldrums. They wore crowns. Each of them, Naruto and Rhaenyra both, had a coronet of some sort upon their head, a circlet of jagged bones and driftwood lashed together by a length of black cord. It made them look savage, like conquerors of old, come to savage the Seven Kingdoms once more. Small wonder the people were so silent. They feared rebellion. Naruto marched right up to the throne, and Rhaenyra with him. There was a new sword at his side, she noticed, and a hammer in his hand, the latter of which he flipped over and offered to Viserys, haft first. The crab feeder is dead. Demon sauntered forward to claim the hammer. We'll add it to the chair. Viserys finally spoke at last. You wear a crowns, I see. Do you also call yourself king and queen? Rhaenyra preened. Once we smashed the triarchy and established ourselves on the stepstones, they named us king and queen of the narrow sea. Naruto knelt, and for once in her life Rhaenyra mirrored him as he spoke. But we know there is only one true king, your grace. As one, they removed their circlets and offered them unto him. Our crowns and the stepstones are yours. Viserys smiled. Had they planned this? Communicated by Raven, perhaps? Where is Lord Corlys? Rhaenyra shrugged. He sailed home to Driftmark to be with his son. Who holds the stepstones, daughter? We do. Naruto answered, still on bent knee, smug as can be. We've already established a port, assembled a fleet, constructed a number of buildings, and planted hardy crops that flourish in the windswept soil. Potatoes, for instance. Viserys blinked. Potatoes? Potatoes. Naruto drawled the word. You know, boil 'em, mash 'em, stick 'em in a stew. Father scoffed not so silently. A ripple ran through the crowd at that, and not a kind one. Alicent longed to unleash the knife hidden within her bodice. But rather than shout and stomp and spit, Naruto simply ignored their derisive laughter as a dragon would a colony of ants underfoot. He seemed calmer now. His time in the stepstones must have hardened him against such petty remarks, or perhaps he simply didn't care. Regardless, they and their disdain were clearly beneath him. He returned his attention to Viserys. That's why we took so long. We didn't want to leave until we were certain the stepstones were secure. Dawn has taken an interest in them. We had to fend off an incursion. Vhagar helped. The crowd went quiet. Alicent couldn't blame them. She did as well. Vhagar? Largest living dragon in the world? That Vhagar? Viserys himself appeared surprised for a moment. And where is she now? Resting outside the dragon pit, Rhaenyra chirped. She's rather fond of me, Father. Father appeared pale, as though he were going to be sick shortly. Good. It pleased her to see him squirm for once in his life. Viserys descended the Iron Throne, Blackfire in hand, careful not to let his ancestral sword click disrespectfully against the steps. Rise the both of you. Naruto and Rhaenyra did as they were bade. The very moment they did, Viserys clamped a hand down on Naruto's shoulder, drew him into a crushing embrace, and pulled back to beam at him. The realm owes you a great debt, Lord of the Stepstones. An uncertain murmur buzzed through the nobles. Father looked like he'd bitten into a lemon. Ha! Naruto bowed his head. I live only to serve, your grace. Since when did he speak like that? Was this planned? It had to be planned. Alicent believed it must be. Perhaps they had been communicating by Raven after all. The bit with Vhagar was clearly unexpected, however. It did not change the fact that everything seemed to be proceeding a little too smoothly, which meant one of two things. Either the other shoe was about to drop, or... Father, Rhaenyra murmured softly. Suddenly. Reminding the king of something, whispering in his ear. Ah, but of course. Viserys beamed, causing Alicent's heart to falter for a moment. Lords and ladies of Westeros, I have an announcement to make. Alicent gulped. No, Surely not. He wouldn't do such a thing. Not here, not before all these people. A fresh murmur of confusion passed through the crowd, but not for long. Stepping back, Viserys drew Naruto and Rhaenyra, who had never once let go of one another's hand since entering the throne room together, and presented the smiling couple before the baffled nobles. It is with great joy that I announce the betrothal of my daughter to Lord Naruto. Her wedding shall take place in a fortnight. Gasps arose from the crowd. Alicent nearly fainted dead away. It was only her iron will that prevented her from doing so. Even so, she swayed a little on her feet. Thank the gods. He hadn't said the rest. Rhaenyra saw her and smiled. 0.0. She cornered her soon thereafter. Alicent had known it was coming and prepared herself accordingly in her sitting room. But even with all the proper preparations, she still wasn't prepared for Rhaenyra's red dress. Gods, but she looked lovely, and, too late, her dear friend crossed the distance between them, uncaring as a Kingsguard locked the door behind her. She only had eyes for her. A hand touched her face, drawing her eyes up, and then she was there, leaning in to kiss her, setting a fresh spark of desire through her veins, and she found herself returning it, and... Wait. She placed both hands on her shoulders to gain distance. Wait. Please, just wait. Rhaenyra did wait, bless her, even allowed her to guide her down to the sitting sofa. Alicent squirmed under her gaze. I had hoped we might speak. Are we not doing so now? I wanted to apologize again. I've been, I think, mistaken, given what I was raised to believe. Wringing her hands in her lap, she narrowly resisted the urge to bite her nails again. There was an order of things, that there was security in the paths laid out for us. I resented you a little for caring so little for any of it, but more than that, I was jealous. For knowing what you wanted, and I did not know what I wanted. A tilt of her head. And now you do. I knew only what was expected of me. She snapped back. I lost my way, and when I thought I had finally found it, discovered a path that might make me happy, my Lord Father tried to take it from me. The man I put my faith in tried to use me as... She cursed, swallowed a sob, and continued. Not his daughter, not a lady of the court, but a common whore to seduce your father. A flicker of fire flashed through Rhaenyra's eyes. And you refused him? Of course I did, she rounded on her. So does that mean, while we were away, you found other means? Alicent flushed. She had to sate her desires somehow, but the shame of it made her glare at Rhaenyra all the same. Do not judge me for what you yourself have done. I sought comfort. I too have desires. Must you make me say it again? Rhaenyra jabbed her ribs with a finger. But for so long, you alone made virtue your banner. The truth burned hotter than dragonfire. And I clung to it in defiance of so many things, in defiance of, have you perhaps, who so disdained it? Dipping her chin for a moment, she bit back a longing sigh. I have been alone, missing you. I spoke out against my father, and I felt a weight lifted from me. And I thought for the first time what I would choose, if not for the duty that was expected of me. She took a deep breath, mastered herself, and barreled on. I do not wish to do as I am told. I wish to live, to be free of all this endless plotting and striving and backstabbing that has so consumed the realm as of late. My family will pursue victory at any cost. I see that now, but as for me, I would... Rhaenyra grinned. Go on, say it. I would join you, but not right away. She panicked a little at the near-feral look that flashed across her face when she inched forward. I scarcely know him as I know you. If we are to do this, it will be as equals, as partners. I must get to know him before Rhaenyra took hold of her hands. Nothing would please me more. And what does he have to say about this? She grinned. He has been pestering me about your answer from the moment we left for the stepstones. Her face flushed, and try as she might, she couldn't quite keep the little thrill from her voice. I was not aware. Of course you weren't. You've been running from him like a scared doe all this time, barely speaking to him. Rhaenyra threaded her fingers in hers. He is a most considerate soul. You would leave me alone with him? I would. She lifted her chin, and for a moment, just a moment, she glimpsed the queen who might yet be. I won his heart as he won mine. We are two halves of a greater whole, he and I, just as you are, as you and he could be if allowed yourself. Here at last, she wilted. I've never been with a man before. Nonsense. Rhaenyra clicked her tongue, admonishing her. Will you shrink from what you set out to do, or will you see it through and make your decision? She already had. History may paint me a villain, but Alicent blew out a breath. I care not. Let them think what they must. I am at last myself with no ambition greater than to love who I please, to be beloved in return, and be free. Rhaenyra smiled softly. You are much changed. I have you to blame for that. She slapped her arm, drawing a giggle from her. Where is he then? I've not seen him since the two of you offered your crowns to your father. Rhaenyra's smile was sly. Oh, he's about. Alicent knew that tone. Rhaenyra, someone coughed. A nearby curtain slid aside to reveal Naruto wearing a sheepish smile. Her heart hitched in her chest at the sight. Had he been standing there the entire time? Impossible. She would have seen him, sensed him, noticed him at the very least, surely. Rhaenyra preened, proud as a dragon and thrice as eager. Shall we converse, then? Just the three of us. Naruto said beside her and laid a hand on hers. If that's all right with you. Alicent gulped and tried to fan her face with one hand. Gods, but it was hot in here. Talk about what? Rhaenyra wound an arm around her waist, drawing her closer, lips alighting upon her cheek in a breathy whisper. Whatever you wish. Naruto clicked his tongue and she felt his fingers gently coil around her own. Don't tease her. If she wants to talk first, that's fine. Talk. Right. They could do a lot of talking. Her mind took that thought and ran away with it. Ran to dark, depraved places. Rhaenyra remained relentless, one hand roving over stomach, then lower still. Just look, her face is redder than her hair. Naruto, for his part, remained true gentleman. Because you're embarrassing her. The princess merely hummed. She can tell me to stop at any time. Her questing fingers drifted lower, pressing into her dress, lower now, drawing a gasp from her lips. Tell me to stop, Alicent. She tried. She couldn't. She didn't want her to stop. Not now, not ever. It was too much stimulation. Her body couldn't cope. She gave in. Whirling, she grabbed Naruto by the cheeks, dragged his face down to hers, and kissed him with reckless abandon. Finally, with a triumphant cry, Rhaenyra pounced upon them both, and together they crashed down upon the bed in a tangle of limbs. Dimly, she became aware of her dress being torn away in the chaos, of herself being pulled into Naruto's lap. Rhaenyra embraced her from behind, planting searing kisses upon her neck, and... Oh, this felt rather nice. From there, Alicent's night descended into a glorious carnal haze. It was, in a word, bliss. Chapter 21. You don't believe in prophecy, do you? So be it. Ignore what I am about to tell you at your peril. The twisted towers will crumble. The slithering serpent shall be bowed, bent, and broken. The malevolent maesters shall each be stricken deaf and dumb. One by one the house of the dragon shall come for them with fire and blood. But you, and those shining stars that come after you, will be worse. All of Westeros, Essos, and even the lands beyond will tremble in fear of your offspring. Those you have with the Hightower girl, most of all. Each will live up to your namesake, though you will live to regret it. And I pity you for that. Heed my words, Naruto Uzumaki. You have eyes, yet you are blind. You have ears, but you cannot hear. You cannot change your fate. And who decided that? Foolish boy. Tilda, Alice, and Naruto. Perils and pitfalls morning dawned, and with it, a delicious soreness. Rhaenyra was the first to awaken beneath the morning sunlight. She almost wished she hadn't stirred at all, if only because she wished to linger in last night's hazy dream a while longer, to dwell once more in that sordid tangle of dark desire and wicked whispers, of fleeting fingers and cruel caresses. At first she feared it had been just that, a dream, albeit a good one, but only that, some stray spectre evaporating with the morning mist. Rolling over, she was greeted by a soft sigh. A violet eye creaked open, and her faith was rewarded. Oh yes, no dream was this. She found herself nestled between them both, Naruto on her right, Alicent on her left, their bodies burrowed beneath the blankets as they slept soundly. Each looked peaceful in sleep, thought she didn't fail to notice who was spooning her. Poor Alicent. She unbent enough to kiss her forehead and drew away before she could awaken. Her dear friend was going to be terribly embarrassed once she finally rose from her slumber. Then again, she'd never been much of an early riser. Grinning, she took a moment to bask in the glory of it all. Sweet, sweet triumph. Never had her heart felt so full as this. It was a good day. but she was hungry and couldn't simply sit still. Nimbly squirming her way free from between her two loved ones, the princess sat up, donned a simple white shift for modesty's sake, and padded to a nearby table. A servant, no doubt a trustworthy one sent by Mother, had left a tray of lemon cakes for the three of them. She devoured one now, taking a moment to observe the two people she cherished more than anything in the world. She was not disappointed. With her absence, Alicent sought warmth and almost immediately found it in the form of Naruto's chest. From there, she tucked herself against him as a wife might her husband. For his part, Naruto muttered something in his sleep and slung an arm around her bare shoulders. A contented noise was his reward as the Hightower heiress snuggled down into him, wholly at her ease. The small, sleepy smile on her face was perhaps the purest thing Rhaenyra had ever seen. Otto Hightower would have an aneurysm if he saw his daughter like this. He might even drop dead from the sheer shock of it all. The thought brought her a wicked burst of pleasure. With that in mind, Rhaenyra paused to peer at her slumbering companions a moment longer, smiling softly to herself as she munched on another cake, committing this moment to memory for all time. Gods, how she wished she could preserve this scene in something other than her mind. Would that it were so. Although, come to think of it, Naruto had once made mention of a wondrous device from the land of his birth. A contraption that allowed one to take moments and preserve them in the form of a picture. Photographs, he said they were. What did he call the device that made him again? A camera? Yes, that was the word. She wondered if he knew how to create one. Surely he must. Perhaps she ought to ask. Her gorge suddenly rose abruptly and she gagged, though not from disgust. Not again! One hand flew to her face as she abandoned her meal and stumbled over to her chamber pot. Scarce did she reach it than she heaved heavily. What little she'd eaten this morning came boiling back up her throat, leaving her retching on her knees. She wiped her mouth with one hand, grimacing at the acrid taste lingering on her tongue. She'd been getting curiously sick during the mornings as of late, almost as though she were... Frowning, she laid a hand upon her stomach, paused now as she felt a faint bump there. Not all that noticeable, but ever present nonetheless. Had she been overindulging, or was she... No, surely not. Surely. Her throat closed at the thought and her mind began to race, hammering in time with the frantic beating of her heart. She hadn't taken moon tea, she'd not seen the need in the stepstones. They'd been so wrapped up in things at the time that the thought never crossed her mind. But now, a child. Gods be good. She was going to be a mother. Air. She needed air. Right bloody now. Perhaps a walk was in order, yes? A good long walk. Yes. She would go to the heart tree in the godswood, clear her head, and return before anyone was the wiser. Throwing on a golden gown, she'd long since learned the value of dressing herself back in the stepstones, she briskly bound her hair back out of her eyes with a strip of leather cord. Deeming herself decent, she stalked to the door, swung it open wide, and poked her head out into the hallway beyond. A single Kingsguard stood watch at the door, as was their duty. She recognized this one. Sir Arik, I wish to go out. The man bowed without hesitation. Understood, Princess. Rhaenyra risked a quick glance over her shoulder. Alicent and Naruto remained sound asleep, all but dead to the world. Her heart twisted at the sight of them, and for the first time she felt a rare flicker of unease. Eventually she would tell them of her discovery, but not today. Because for the first time in a long while, she was afraid. 0.0, 0.0. Alicent didn't want her dream to end, for she was certain this must be one. From the moment she opened her eyes to find herself naked and abed with a certain blonde, she believed it must be so. What else could it be but a dream? Some mad delusion conjured by a mind that craved comfort. Yes, that's all this was. Nothing more, nothing less. To believe otherwise was a fallacy. Last night and this morning, why, they must be a dream. And that was fine. She was safe in her dreams. No one could hurt her in her dreams. Because, you see, this couldn't possibly be real. It simply wasn't possible. Life had never ever been kind to her from the first, so why would it suddenly favour her now? She'd lost mother, then father, brother, was a distant stranger, at best. Rhaenyra and Naruto were away in the stepstones, leaving her alone, and now she was clearly hallucinating in their absence. The notion that she would actually awaken to find herself safe and warm and happy in King's Landing was so foreign to her as to be anathema. Safe? King's Landing wasn't safe. It was the very opposite of safe. A nest of vipers and vultures, all grasping for the crown, trampling everyone else underfoot. So, yes, this must be a dream because she was too terrified to believe otherwise. Had she gone mad? How quaint. She didn't particularly feel mad. But was that not itself a sign of madness? Such thoughts did not behoove her, and reluctantly she took stock of her surroundings. Dream though this might be, she found herself aware of a great many things. Stranger still, Rhaenyra herself was nowhere to be found. Which was odd, because she thought she'd dream about her too. Last night she had been quite present, but now she was nowhere to be seen. There was only Naruto, his right arm draped protectively around her shoulder while he slept, one leg tangled between hers beneath the blankets. Her core ached, and she knew without looking that she'd lain with him. Multiple times. She might well get with child, if she wasn't careful. Father would probably tell her to take moon tea and have her rid herself of any possible complications. Bah, this was her dream. To the hells with what father thought. He had no power here, couldn't torment her in this place. Warmed by such a thought, Alicent laid back down against Naruto's chest, content to continue dreaming. If this was a dream, she didn't have to fear consequences, so why not? Emboldened by her delusion, she pressed a chaste kiss to the blonde's chest, then his collarbone, followed by his throat, now his chin, and at long last his lips. She held them there for a long moment before she finally drew away at her leisure, delighting herself in the freedom of her dream as she never dared to do in public. Her hands draped across his arms and shoulders as she pressed her bosom into his chest and ground herself against him, delighting in the sensations he evoked in her. If this was a dream, then she didn't want to wake up anytime soon. Perhaps it would be best if she never returned to reality at all. Thus, it came as something of a surprise when Naruto opened his eyes. It wasn't a sharp or sudden thing. He simply shifted against her, causing her to look up, and once she did, she found the whiskered warrior staring down at her. For a moment, Naruto looked quite surprised to see her. Those bright baby blue eyes of his went wide, almost as though he were shocked to see her in his bed. But that didn't make sense. This was her dream, was it not? Why should he be surprised to see her? At length, recognition dawned in his gaze, followed by realization and finally, relief. Why relief? She wasn't worthy of him. That's right, a nasty little voice of doubt hissed in Heart. You are unworthy. You'll wake up any moment now, cold and alone. Hey, her paramour rasped suddenly, hoarse voice cutting through her fears. Hello, she smiled timidly in return. This is a rather strange dream. Naruto tilted his head. Pretty sure this ain't a dream. A hysteric giggle fled from her lips. Is it not? He reached over to pinch her wrist. He could have done anything else. Could have been mean about it. Cruel even. Gods knew he had every right to be. But he merely pinched her. That, and the brief burst of pain that followed, rattled her dream delusion theory more than anything else. Another pinch drew a yelp from her, causing her to recoil. Ow! For a moment she forgot her nakedness and slapped his chest, glaring at him. Why did you have to do that? Because, he withdrew his hand, you can't feel pain in a dream, right? Alicent's every thought shriveled and died. This is real? His head bobbed once. Yup. Then that means, yup, you and I and Rhaenyra, yup. She glanced up at him. Then this isn't a dream? Nope. He granted her a small, lopsided grin. Rhaenyra can be pretty persuasive when she wants to be, which meant last night actually happened. That mad tangle of limbs, the feeling of complete and utter abandonment followed by bliss as she ravaged them and let herself be ravaged in return. Gods be good. It was all real, really and truly. A tiny part of her sad, broken soul briefly balked at it. She didn't want to believe such things were real. Because if they were real, if this was real, if she was truly and finally happy, that meant said happiness could possibly be taken from her. The idea terrified her. A little shiver of fear shook her shoulders at the very thought. Alicent groaned against it, burying her head into Naruto's chest. He must have sensed her doubt it where he lay because offered her his arm. You could pinch me if it makes you feel better. Take him up on it. In a rare fit of pique, Alicent did just that. Surging upright, she took a hold of his whiskered cheeks, hooked her thumbs into the marks and yanked, pulling at his face, tugging it to and fro. She expected anger on his part, derision for her actions at the very least. She received neither. Ow! Naruto only laughed, undaunted by her poking and prodding. Not a dream, see? I'm real. He took a hold of her hands, gently prying them from his face as he continued. You're real. All of this is real. Nothing to be afraid of here. The words swept the wind from her stressful sails and she sank down against him. Where's Rhaenyra? He shrugged a shoulder, unconcerned. Restless and chaotic. She's never been the sort to sit still for long. Maybe she went for a walk? So what now? That was the question, wasn't it? She hadn't really made plans going forward beyond her freedom, and it was good to be free. Make no mistake, but she had no idea what came next. Where did they go from here? Where could they go? She couldn't see the path forward, and that frightened her more than anything else. Unbidden, she called Rhaenyra's remarks to her. Will you shrink from what you set out to do, or will you make your choice? Her gaze flitted back to Naruto, trying to guess his motives in all this, to no avail. He remained an enigma to her. For his part, the baffling blonde looked content to lay in bed, hands holding hers, not touching any other part of her. Honorable of him. More than she expected. Lust often made beasts of even the most noble men. That he hadn't simply flipped her over onto her back and begun ravaging her spoke well of his restraint. Did she want him to? The answer rather surprised her. Love could come later in the fullness of time, as did all things. For now, lust would more than suffice. She liked him well enough. Clearly she found him desirable if she'd been willing to lay with him last night. More than that, her body craved his again. She shifted against him, wincing but a little as her core ached anew. Did she want to bear his children? Perhaps in the future. Maybe someday. She entertained the thought on a whim. Her mind ran with it. She could imagine them now. 3 boys and a girl. But for now, they were alone, the both of them. This was her chance. Not just to talk, but to prove something to herself. To shed that last thorn of doubt still lodged within her heart. Mustering up her courage, Alicent gently tugged her hands from his and crawled into his lap. From there, she sat up slowly, deliberately, making her intent clear. The blankets did the rest for her, falling away like a forgotten gown as she bared her upper torso to him. Sunlight gleamed through silk curtains to dance across her pale skin, tempting him. Look at me, she said, more a plea than anything else. Sure enough, he did. No, more than that, he stared. There was a hunger there in his gaze, leashed perhaps, but visible to her all the same. He found her attractive. That was good, very good, if she was being honest with herself. The prospect of being desired by someone warmed her more than words and did much to banish her own self-doubt. She bit her lip and lifted her chin, trying to appear braver than she was. Would he know her? Would look at her? Would he see her? Not just as a woman, but a person? Not some broodmare, but Alicent Hightower, she who had forsaken her family for the sake of her own happiness. You may touch me, if you wish. She may be an exile in all but name, but she was still a lady. I am yours. His hands settled onto her hips. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. The moment he uttered those words, Alicent felt a weight leave her. What? How long had it been since someone said such to her? Rhaenyra certainly, but to hear it from Naruto of all people. Something snapped into place within her mind and she lost control of herself once more. No, perhaps that wasn't quite right. She didn't so much lose control as she did abandon it, casting aside as one might a spent goblet or a broken sword. All thoughts of virtue and restraint and manipulation fell away from her. She became unburdened, not just in body but soul as well. Because at the end of the day, she craved freedom. She always had, all her life, ever since she first sat her mother's knee. True freedom, not simply to carve a window into the wall of her prison, but to shatter the cage which held her heart, walls, floor, ceiling and all. Once again, she reaffirmed her choice. Here at last she dared herself to be bold, if only for a moment. She couldn't quite conjure the brash bravery of Rhaenyra, but she could come close. Ignoring her fear of rejection, Alicent dipped down to kiss Naruto full on the lips, and as she did, she began to press herself down onto him, not frantically or forcefully, nor fiercely, as she'd done last night, but slowly, deliberately, hips undulating against his, drawing out the movement just as Lady Aemma had taught her, the better to heighten his pleasure. Once, twice, then thrice for good measure until she made her point. He wasn't crass enough to grunt or growl or gasp but she could see the fire in his eyes as he hit teeth behind his lips. I want to ride you into the ground. How does that sound? He loosed a low laugh. Non-negotiable. Alicent planted both hands atop his chest and began to move faster, with purpose now. There was no longer any pain to encumber her. Every sensation sent a fiery frisson of delight racing beneath her skin, no deeper still now as he began to move with her in earnest. Her breasts bounced like ripe fruit on a branch, and his hands rose to cup them, not roughly as she feared he might, but gently, cradling them in his palms. His faint smile was her only warning. Then she found herself gasping as his thumbs traced her nipples, then again now as he dipped up to kiss them himself. Abruptly, his right hand cupped the back of her head, drawing her down to him, to which she yielded gladly, bringing her lips to his, mouth to mouth, as their bodies quivered in ecstasy. From there, the world dissolved into a decadent daze of depravity. By the time she came back to herself, the sun had crept much higher in the sky. She knew not what hour of the day it was and cared not. Tucked into his chest and warm beneath the blankets, she focused only on her own relief. The postcoital bliss that blew all her fears away like so many leaves in the wind. She was sated and slick and spent, her doubts destroyed. For now, nothing else mattered. No, wait, she told a lie. Laying a hand on Naruto's chest, she glanced towards the door. We really should search for Rhaenyra. As though summoned by that very declaration, the Princess of Dragonstone swept through said door in a rush and slammed it behind her. Not so long ago, Alicent might have squeaked and panicked. Now she merely drew up the blankets to preserve her modesty. Her dear friend's smile was decidedly strained. Father wishes us to join him for breakfast. Alicent bit her lower lip until it hurt. That couldn't be good. 0.0. The royal family awaited them. Naruto found Viserys sat at the head of a grand table, tucking into a hearty morning meal of mutton alongside his wife and brother, the latter of whom looked up and waved their way as they slipped inside. Emma gave a greeting of her own, wearing a sly smile. "Sleep well?" she crooned. Heat seared up the back of his neck. Blast it all. They knew. Rhaenyra coughed into a fist as poor Alicent sputtered incoherently. Demon was, well, demon. Honestly, that man just didn't seem to age. He, by all means, do tell, said Prince, gestured grandly at the three of them. How was it? He quirked a blonde brow at the rogue prince, refusing to rise to the bait so blatantly dangled before him. How was what? Your evening, of course. His smile said what his words could not. Don't keep us in suspense now. Was it everything you hopped for? Alicent hadn't said a single proper word, but now her face went redder than her hair, to say nothing of Rhaenyra. She'd been strangely silent, skittish even since he awoke this morning. He had the distinct feeling he was missing something there, but for the life of him, he couldn't figure out what. Demon. Viserys heaved a sigh between mouthfuls of mutton. Must you provoke them? Yes, I must, his brother hummed happily. It is a need I cannot deny. The king shrugged helplessly as though to say, what can you do? Please, sit. Naruto claimed a seat in the middle, only for Rhaenyra to plonk down on his right near her mother while he, Alicent, claimed his left. Demon waggled a pale brow her way and in turn drew a squeak from her, but thankfully said nothing more to that effect. Good. If he made one disparaging remark, he was going to smack him in the mouth. But where was... A faint trill caught his attention as he closed the door behind them, and belatedly, he noticed baby Bale lurking at the foot of the table. Well, perhaps not a baby anymore. Visenya's dragon had grown since he'd last seen him. Once a tiny hatchling, he was about the size of a rather large cat now, perched near Aemer's feet as he watched over his young charge, even now crawling around under the table with reckless abandon. Those eerily keen blood-red eyes noticed his gaze and settled upon him for a long moment before he snorted and returned his attention to the toddler, who in turn seized upon his moment of inattention to grab his tail and yank. Naruto winced, half expecting an angry squawk from the young dragon, or worse, a burst of flame he'd need to save her from. There was no need. To his credit, the black dragonling only huffed once, in mild annoyance, raised an ebony wing, used it drew his charge closer, and summarily tucked his charge against his side. Visenya responded as most toddlers would, of course, squealing happily and latching onto the rest of her partner to squeeze him for all she was worth. Almost immediately thereafter, she buried her face into his dark scales to nuzzle them. Bale laid his horned head down, closed his eyes, and submitted to this indignity without complaint. Strange, that dragon seemed awfully used to her, downright tolerant even. Almost as if he were... Viserys coughed ever so politely, commanding his attention. Good morrow, son. He flushed a little. embarrassed despite himself. I'm not your son yet. The king remained undaunted. You will be in 2 weeks' time. He had a point. Steeling himself, he lifted his chin. About the dragons being poisoned. There's no need to rush, Viserys chided him with a raised hand. It has been some time since we were all together in the same room. Let us speak of gladder tidings before we throw ourselves headlong into the fray. His gaze passed over Alicent ever so briefly. Was that a flicker of approval in his eyes just now, before settling upon Rhaenyra once more? Syrax has grown larger still, I see. Rhaenyra found her voice at last. She has, father. She's of a size with Carax's now. Daemon hummed his approval and drummed his fingers against the table. And what of Vhagar? She tolerates me. Right. Naruto coughed into a fist. Follows you around like a lost puppy, more like. You should have seen her back in the Stepstones. It was a Dora Owl. He grunted when Rhaenyra kicked him under the table, scowling as Daemon barked a laugh. It's the truth, though. Viserys tucked into the last of his meal with a bemused smile. It is good to have her close, regardless. As things stand, only Lena could hope to claim her at present. Daemon scoffed and laid his chin to rest upon the knuckles of his right hand. She's welcome to try. That hoary old lizard will eat her alive. Dreamfire nearly did. Don't disparage the poor girl, Aemma chided him. She is of blood and fire, just as we are. Her egg didn't hatch. Is it any desire she should wish for a dragon? Alicent reached for his hand under the table. Naruto welcomed it and gave her fingers a quick squeeze. It happened while you were away, Viserys explained when Rhaenyra made to ask. She barely escaped with her life. The princess firmed her lips before she dared ask the question on all their minds. Was she burned? No, her father admitted, but she suffered quite the fright. I dare say she won't try again. But you think she may with Vhagar, would you not, in her shoes? An awkward silence followed. Let us speak of happier things. Aemma broke it with a clap of her hands, bless her. Theirs was a raven from Driftmark this morning. Laenor has awoken from his fever. The maester believes he will live. Naruto released a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. That's good. He chuckled a little despite himself. How is he? Much changed, Daemon remarked, seemingly amused for reasons he couldn't understand. Lord Corlys claims his son is a changed man since his awakening. Ever since he left his bed, he's been spending much time with sea smoke. Understandable. War did that to you. A near-death experience had a way of changing a man. Perhaps it had changed Laenor for the better. Perhaps not. His close brush with death might well make him a better dragon rider in the years to come. Who could say? It was no longer his concern. So long as he lived. How fares Bloodstone, then? Viserys interjected suddenly. It must have been terribly difficult getting crops to grow there. It was. Rhaenyra glared at her hands, no doubt remember the dirt under her nails. Daemon chuckled. Got your hands dirty, did you? She growled at him. Viserys leaned back in his chair. By all means, tell us of your time there. Naruto perked up, warming to the subject for entirely different reasons, and soon launched into a wild tale of his own. It took some trial and error, but with his myriad chakra natures and the proper seeds, he was eventually able to cotton onto what worked and what didn't. In time, he stumbled upon a surefire method to create a nutrient-rich soil that allowed all sorts of things to grow. Carrots, peas, corn, but mostly potatoes. Way too many potatoes. And if said experiments left him and Rhaenyra flinging mud at one another on occasion, well, he had some very fond memories of muddy sex on the beach. Good times, but he wasn't going to tell Viserys about those. If the Isle of Dragonstone had been their safe haven, then the Stepstones represented stepping out of that comfort zone and learning just who they truly were. It had proven something of a learning experience for them both. He wasn't used to being in charge of, well, anything, really. Rhaenyra was, however, both good at giving orders and administration given her time fighting in the Isles. She taught him what he needed to learn, and in return, he taught her the more common things she didn't know. Food meant livestock, and livestock translated to shepherds, which meant people. And people needed a place to live. By contrast, buildings hadn't been all that hard to make. The Stepstones had plenty of rock to go round, so he'd mind that, and builders came aplenty from King's Landing. Then masons and craftsmen, once it became clear he had ample coin with which to pay those who worked under him. Shadow clones could work well through the night, given enough chakra and instruction, so they too were put to the task. In only a few months, they had a series of sturdy constructs made, enough to house a growing population. Result? In addition to raising crops, he'd learned a few things about construction. It would serve him well in the years to come. He'd taken to introducing concepts from his world as well, not all of which stuck, but those that did proved memorable. Ramen seemed to be a lost cause for now, but soccer, for instance, was easy enough to recreate in Westeros. Take a line in the sand, a goalpost, a ball, and you had hours of fun. Men and women and children alike, builders and mercenaries and sailors all, took to it like fish to water. Other sports soon caught on. Baseball, football, even basketball. Turns out the people of Westeros were rather competitive. There was even talk of building an arena, once the rest of the Isles were settled, making it a national pastime. A port was even easier to construct. They already had a fleet at their disposal thanks to the Triarchy's ill-fated venture, and many ships were repurposed for that very, well, purpose. An ill-fated cursory incursion by a few Dornish ships saw their ranks swell yet further. A call went out for sailors of every stripe, and enough answered to make the business profitable. There was some vetting involved, of course, and the less-than-trustworthy sort soon vanished beneath the waves of the stepstones. Once said fleet was vetted and armed, then came the next step. They in turn imposed a tax on all vessels passing by in return for protection from pirates, slavers and the like. Those few fools who tried their luck and struck those under said protection as it were, found themselves sunk by Vhagar and Karama. Piracy dropped to near nothing as a result. Within a year they garnered something of a reputation for themselves, alongside a near stranglehold over trade across the narrow sea. Lord Beesbury had complained bitterly about investing so much coin before they'd begun their little campaign in the stepped zones, but now his investment was paying dividends. Not all were pleased about this, and the Triarchy even less so, but neither had the power to meddle with them for the time being. In time, he would turn his gaze further to Essos itself, and beyond even that, the ruins of old Valyria. But that is a story for another time. Once he was certain their main base was secure, he'd left a capable steward in charge, a man he trusted not to betray him, and with his senses that was saying something while he was away in King's Landing. With his speed, it was a simple matter to flit back and forth between the stepstones and the capital as he pleased. Running back and forth between them was annoying, but hardly time-consuming. All the more reason to master your father's jutsu. Yeah, I'm working on it, Furball. Fascinating. Viserys steepled his fingers as he finished his tale. And the rest of the islands? We're still expanding for the most part, but yes, he agreed. Everyone's well paid and taken care of over there. I saw to it myself. Good. An invisible weight seemed to leave the king's shoulder. That is very good. It heartens me to hear how well you've done, truly it does, and to know my daughter is in such capable hands. Rhaenyra flushed. Emma nudged him with her elbow. My love? Yes, he heaved a sigh. I suppose we can't avoid it any longer. Before we address the matter of the Hightowers and the dragons, there are those who I had considered raising up, bringing into our house. Rhaenyra perked up, intrigued. Such as? Demon took the topic and ran with it. Your father and I spent the last year looking into them. Some are mongrels. They have little potential. We've discovered 3 that might actually be related to us directly, and one of them fled into Fleabottom when she realized she was being followed. Alicent raised her hand. I beg your pardon, but Emma smiled her way. You needn't hold your tongue, dear girl. Naruto preened with pride. Yup, that settled it for him. Rhaenyra's mom was best mom. Is this truly wise? The redhead lass finished tentatively. Raising bastards up to be nobles? We cannot be certain of the strength of their character. What if they betray us? There is a risk, of course, Viserys granted her a nod, but we're hardly giving them dragons now, are we? They will be indebted to us. They will be watched. And if they prove themselves to be unsuited to court, well, I'll kill them. Demon shrugged a shoulder. One of them claims to be a half-brother of ours. We'll see their mettle yet. And if it is lacking, Oi, Naruto interjected, isn't that a bit much? We shall cross that bridge when we come to it, Amma temporized, levelling a stern look upon Demon. The prince raised his hands. It was merely a jest, sister. You did not make it seem like one. They would be lower on the succession, of course, Viserys continued apace, but they are in a way useful. At present, our bloodline is imperiled. He looked to Emma, who nodded in return. If some foul fate were to befall me and your mother, All of you would be vulnerable. We must multiply and quickly. Strengthen our line. A fist thumped down on the table, rattling the silverware. Secure the succession against those who would assail us from within and without. More than that, these two will serve as a distraction, a smokescreen of sorts, the better to mask our true intentions from the Hightowers. Rhaenyra tilted her head. Have you worked out the means by which to approach them? Leave that matter to us. Now on to Otto Hightower. With those words, the room fell silent. Alicent squeezed his hand hard. He has overreached himself as of late. Emma's smile seemed sweet, but her words were pure fire. While he hasn't made any moves, overt or otherwise, since Alicent's outburst, the fact remains that he is a threat. A pause now, as he looked toward his daughter. I cannot thank you enough for bringing this matter to our attention. You spared us no small amount of unpleasantness. The poor girl flushed but lifted her chin. I do not regret it. Naruto patted her hand beneath the table. Good. She'd found her spine, now she just needed to strengthen it. Rhaenyra scowled, a hint of her old fire shining through. If you know of his plots, then why haven't you expelled him from the city? Or clapped him in irons at the very least? Merely on the word of his daughter. He looked to Alicent. We have your words, yes, and your confession, but we need more than that to oust a man such as him. He has been thorough thus far. Then arrange an accident, Demon chimed in. Poison him, as he sought to poison me. Such a notion left a sour taste in Naruto's mouth, but he couldn't bring himself to disagree. One way or another, Otto had to go, and soon. Preferably before the wedding, because the moment he realized what they were up to, all hells would break loose. There is no need for such underhanded methods, Demon, Viserys replied, and the sudden twist in his tone left the whiskered warrior doing a double take. For all his plots and schemes, he has made one fatal mistake, and not just in alienating Alicent to his cause. No, this is what we will do, he told them. It took the better part of 5 minutes to explain, but tell them he did. By the end, Naruto found himself leaning back in his chair. That's surprisingly vicious of you. Viserys smiled. It was not a nice smile. Do you not approve? No, he raised a hand. I do, just damn. Why didn't I think of that? You would have in time. Emma answered for her husband. The Hightowers and those allied with them must be convicted beyond any semblance of a doubt. We must tear them out, root and stem. Nor are they our only enemies. Viserys seconded her, steepling his fingers. The matter of the meat in the dragon pit has already been tested by Maester Orwyle. Trace amounts of poison were discovered therein. Subtle perhaps, but over time, they may well have served to stunt the growth of our dragons, to weaken them, make them more susceptible to illness. Rhaenyra picked at her foot. And this maester of yours is trustworthy? He is young, honest, and earnest, eager to do good where good work is to be done. Emma answered her dauntless daughter. We believe he has no knowledge of whomever began this plot, but when confronted with it, he investigated most earnestly and offered a number of remedies. Naruto didn't doubt that, but he resolved to meet this Orwyle in person when he could. Of all the people in King's Landing, he trusted only those in this room and, to a lesser extent, Sir Harold, Arik, and Eric. No one else. King's Landing was a den of vipers just waiting to bite. Better safe than sorry, Alicent chimed in, mind ever sharp. And the Grand Maester Mellos? Currently recuperating in Old Town. Demon's smile suggested he had a hand in the older man's absence. I dare say he'll be in for quite the shock when he returns. Rhaenyra turned her gaze on him, made curious. You believe this is a conspiracy of the Citadel, then? How? The prince preened. I have my sources. That said, Viserys continued apace, testing the meat alone is insufficient. The dragons themselves need to be looked in on. We know Vermithor and Silvering remain unaffected, as does Vhagar, but we're concerned for Dreamfire and Caraxes, the latter of which has taken ill. To say nothing of Syrax and the younger worms. We've allowed some of them to range out of the pit, but that is only a temporary solution at best. If my dragon dies, I'll have Hightower's head, Demon muttered blackly. We need someone to look into this immediately. Naruto nodded his agreement, mind whirling. Definitely. All eyes turned his way. Ah, so that was their game. He blew out an exasperated, slightly bemused breath. You want me to enter the dragon pit myself, don't you? Viserys granted him a careworn smile. Not all of us are so loved by dragons. Rhaenyra gripped his hand in hers. "I'll go with you." And just like that, his course was set. It would prove a memorable day. 0.0, into the pit they went. By they, he meant himself and Rhaenyra, of course. Newfound bravery aside, Alicent wasn't about to risk herself in the face of such colossal beasts. They tolerated Targaryens and him, no others. Any intrusion on her part here would likely be met with unpleasantness. Still, darkness and the smell of dragons aside, he couldn't help but marvel at the construction of this place as they delved deeper into the dark. Torch in hand, he threaded his way through the pit, with Rhaenyra only a step behind. Still, her presence did little to ease his anxiety. She hadn't been quite right today, and a very small part of him wondered if he was to blame for that. Risking a glance back at her, he found nothing in her face to give any anxiety away. He still sensed it within her. All the same, lurking like a dagger in the dark. Something was troubling her. But what? He knew not. And so he turned his attention to the dragon pit instead. Maegor may have been a monster in many aspects, but he'd had a rare few good ideas, and the dragon pit, for the most part, was one of them. He'd built it into the hill during the old days, and while it was a marvel of engineering for that time period, he'd neglected to maintain and expand it as the beasts grew larger. Perhaps they ought to know it, the better for the dragons to grow. Or construct a new one next to the city altogether. Food for thought? The logistics of such an idea made his head ache, and he shunted them aside for now. Down into the dark they went, threading through tunnels. Movement in the dark drew his eye, and excited he turned towards it as the tunnel split. In short order he found himself in a large chamber hewn from earth and stone, and there, nestled in the centre of it all, crouched low over a dark mound of some sort, almost invisible in the gloom. That was a rather large dragon. "Which one is that?" he whispered softly. "Dreamfire," Rhaenyra murmured. "She is formidable." Despite his concern, a grin split his face. That was one way to describe it. A blue-silver dragon, larger than most, and, judging by the hiss she gave, didn't seem all that pleased to see them. "Careful." Rhaenyra's voice was a breath whisper behind him. "She's guarding her eggs." Naruto edged closer, raising one hand. "Easy," he soothed, drawing near. "You're all right." He expected fire and flame. Instead, she reared back and booped him with her snout, pushing him away. He caught her the second time and held fast, not letting himself be budged, yet keeping his stance low, careful to show the proper obeisance to the dragon mother. He grinned and rubbed both hands over her scaled face. "Oh, you're a good mom, ain't ya? Don't worry. We're not here for your babies. Just a checkup." Rhaenyra squirmed under his gaze. He'd been right earlier. She was hiding something, but what? Was this another one of her schemes? No, he didn't think so. There was nothing she could possibly want to hide from him, so what? Without warning, Dreamfire inhaled deeply. He tensed, half expecting a burst of fire, but no. The she-dragon drew another deep breath through her nostrils, not her mouth. Almost as if she were testing the air, sniffing it, scenting it. Abruptly, she bulled forward, knocking him aside. There had been no ill intent behind the blow. Even so, he stumbled, baffled as Dreamfire drew closer to the princess. Rhaenyra went terribly still. She didn't dare move as the bright dragon sniffed her. Once, twice, thrice now. Her lips peeled back as she growled, this great gleaming eyes narrowing to fine ruby slits. A triumphant trill rattled the pit. It was their only warning. Dreamfire threw back her head, belched a brief geyser of flame into the ceiling, and lay her mighty head down beside Rhaenyra. Her very body shifted with her massive bulk, large wings and tail curling almost protectively around her, as though to embrace her and shield her from any and all harm. Almost like one prospective mother-to-be greeting another. But that would mean... Naruto turned his senses on her and found nothing out of the ordinary. Rhaenyra remained as she always was, a burning beacon of fiery light and life, unchanged and untouched by the world. A strange swell of disappointment welled up inside of him. Look again. He squinted, focusing with all his might. And then, finally, he saw what he'd failed to see before. There, a little glimmer of life in her belly. Young, small, hard to look for, harder to see, and glimpsed only by chance. Perhaps sensing the weight of his gaze, the princess laid both hands over her belly defensively. Not that it made any difference. He still saw that little light, that tiny speck of chakra coalescing in her belly, forged between the two of them. A soul. Life. Naruto's mind fizzled, sparked back to life, fizzled out again now, before words came to him. Even then, in his shock, he could only manage to muster two. "You're pregnant." Beneath his gaze, Rhaenyra smiled nervously. "Surprise?" Chapter 22. The idea that we Targaryens control the dragons is an illusion. In truth, they are a power our ancestors never should have trifled with. Yet without them, our reign would undoubtedly buckle beneath its own weight. We need them, as they need us. Promise me you won't let the dragons die out, Rhaenyra. Promise me. Tilda, the dragon has many heads. This is delightful. Emma wasn't angry when she heard the news. How could she be? On the contrary, she was anything but aggravated. Delighted, excited, surprised. So many fancy words slipped through her mind as she crooned over her dazed daughter, now reclining before her upon a lounge of red cushions. "Mother, please," her eldest child squirmed in place as she fussed over her to no avail. "You're embarrassing me. And why aren't you angry?" Angry? Why would she be angry? She was going to be a grandmother! She must tell everyone. No, wait, she really shouldn't. Otto Hightower mustn't learn of this. Blast it all. "You could never make me angry, dear girl." Willfully, she forced herself to focus on happier things. "You're getting married soon, and already you've made me a grandmother." She was babbling now. She knew, but she just couldn't stop herself. "Did you plan for this? If so, you have impeccable timing." Her expression said otherwise. "Not planned, then. Good to know." Credit where credit was due, Naruto and Rhaenyra had come racing back the moment they learned the news. How wonderful that they'd brought it to her first, pausing only to make sure Caraxes, Dreamfire and Syrax were well tended to before returning. To hells with the dragons! This was much more important. To be a grandmother already, and at such a young age. There could be no greater blessing. "When did you realize you were with child?" she asked. "Have your courses stopped?" Rhaenyra flushed, bless her fierce little heart. "You mean my bleeding?" Naruto had been hovering at Rhaenyra's elbow for some time now, silent as the grave. Good boy, he'd make a fine father. But at this turn of topic, his whiskered visage became distinctly grey. "I should go," her daughter rounded on him. "You stay right there. If I must endure this torment, so too shall you." "Oh, come on, have mercy. You're the one that put a babe in my belly." She tucked a stray strand of silver hair behind one ear. "You should be grateful I haven't thumped you upside the head." Huh? Emma knew the brilliant blonde wasn't one to let a jab like that pass him by, and he didn't disappoint her. "That's funny. You seem to enjoy being thumped an awful lot in the bedroom." Rhaenyra choked on her spit. Had Alicent been conscious, she might have spat out her wine. Alas, the poor girl was quite unconscious at the moment. She'd fainted the moment those two delivered the good news. Now that promised to be an illuminating conversation when the poor girl awakened. But on to more exciting matters. "Why you? Cheeky little dragon." Red-faced, she winged a pillow at him. Feisty fox. Emma scarcely heard either of their bickering. She was too busy pressing an ear to her daughter's stomach, which ironically put a stop to that very argument before it could escalate beyond thrown pillows. No kicking yet, the babe was still early, but as she ran her hands over her torso, she couldn't miss the telltale bump there. They'd need to have found a loyal master to confirm it, but if her suspicions were correct, she'd been holding this child for at least a moon's turn now. A small, girlish voice squealed in the back of her head. "Eh! Just wait until your grandsire learns of you, little one. He'll be head over heels." That's quite enough. Rhaenyra flailed her hands to shoo her away, and undaunted, the queen scooped up Visenya from her cradle to present it her unto her sister. "Say hello to your nephew, dear girl." Rhaenyra lifted her chin just so, slightly indignant. "Or her niece. Yours will be a boy," she crooned indulgently. "I have a feeling. Have you thought of names?" Naruto laughed into a fist. Rhaenyra turned a baleful glare upon him and said, laugh dissolved into a cough. "We did, but," her daughter tossed her head imperiously, "I wish for our first child to have a memorable name. Not offence meant toward tradition, but so many of our own are simply variations of one another, or the second of his name, and so on. Intriguing, but not unexpected. Did you settle upon one?" "A few, actually," her daughter preened, proud as a peacock, but nervous, secretly craving her approval. "You may dislike some of them." "Will I now? I shall be the judge of that." She sat briskly beside her and took her hands in her own. Tell me. Rhaenyra spoke quickly. For the firstborn, we were debating Jacaerys or Tywin. Emma considered the latter for a moment. Tywin Targaryen. A good name. A strong name. A legendary name. Unconventional to be sure and certain to kick up a fuss amongst the Lannisters, but honestly, screw the Lannisters. Ruthless debt-mongering bastards. It was their own bloody fault for not naming someone sooner. And if a girl comes along, we wish to name her Helena. Your father will be delighted. Here. She handed little Visenya off to Naruto, who sputtered for a moment before accepting her. Best get some practice in while you can. Bale creaked an eye open where he lay, huffed once, and went back to sleep. The goodest of boys indeed. Now then, she steepled her fingers and looked to them intently. When did this happen? I only suspected it recently myself, Rhaenyra replied, idly touch a hand to her stomach. Dreamfire confirmed it. Emma didn't bother to hide her smile this time. Perhaps you carry her future rider in your belly, or mayhaps that of Vhagar. It would certainly explain why the hoary old lizard was so keen to follow her dear daughter around like a lost puppy. Still, I'm not surprised this happened. You've been at it like rabbits, and with no moon tea besides. Naruto's entire face burned red as he tucked his chin into his chest. By comparison, Rhaenyra's own protest proved far more vocal. Mother, be honest with yourself, dear girl. She traced a finger across her stomach. Be doubly thankful your wedding takes place in less than a fortnight, not 9 months, else you might be accused of having a bastard. Her daughter's face closed down, a hint of fire flickering in her lively lilac eyes as she absolutely hissed. I will have no child of mine called such. Why would they be called a bastard? Naruto made a confused noise, undaunted as Visenya yanked on his hair. Where I come from, a child is a child, regardless of their parents. She didn't miss the protective way in which he held her dear daughter. In that instant, she knew this boy would go to hell and back for his children. Kids are kids. The fault shouldn't lie with them. Visenya unknowingly burbled her agreement to that effect, drawing a grin from him. Ha! A grin split his face as crowed in triumph. She gets it. Don't you, Visenya? He tickled her, drawing a delighted noise from little Targaryen. How gentle his homeland sounded, and how little she knew of it. Emma flicked him a pitying glance to mollify him. Would that things were so simple here. Nevertheless, we mustn't move up the wedding date. To do so now would show weakness or worse, imply haste, and that alone will give many reason to suspect something is amiss. So we must wait then. Her daughter crossed both arms before her bosom. I'd rather have the whole wedding done and over with. Emma smiled softly. I know, dear girl. You do realize you'll have to wear a dress, don't you? Her dear daughter blanched. Must I? A pale brow rose. Did you intend to wear a tunic and breeches to your wedding? Maybe. Absolutely not! Rhaenyra gagged, failing to notice Naruto's sudden interest in the topic. Emma did not. And you, dear boy, will have to wear something besides armor. The whiskered warrior looked like he'd just been stabbed. Do I got her? Yes, you must, she chided him ever so gently. Don't worry, I'm sure you'll look wonderful. Viserys will see to it, perhaps after he has a rather long chat with you. Naruto gulped, but the mention of her father seemed to reactivate Rhaenyra. Speaking of father, where is he? And where is Demon hiding for that matter? Emma smiled, and this time it was all teeth. They're enacting the next stage of the plan. 0.0. Hugh Hammer didn't fear dragons. But not having fear didn't mean you couldn't have respect for what they was. Make no mistake, he knew they was big and tough and oftentimes mean as can be, but they wasn't invincible. At the end of the day, they were just meat. Dangerous fire-breathing meat that could and would snap you up in a single bite and swallow you whole, but meat all the same. Anything died if you hit it hard enough. Everyone succumbed to time, sooner or later. Anyone could break, given the proper application of pressure. He knew these things because he was a blacksmith, not a butcher. His trade lay in the realm of weapons and armor, not fire and blood. That said, he was good at what he did. Very good. Not the best in King's Landing, but good enough to make a decent bit of coin, enough to get by. He did what he could, worked where he was able. But there wasn't much demand for smithing in the capital at the moment. It was a time of peace, not war. You didn't need swords for peace. These days he did what he had to, taking what work he could, where he could. Sometimes that meant forging hinges for doors or belt buckles, maybe a bracer if he was lucky. Oftentimes it meant helping his less than reputable friends. Smugglers, for instance. That lot always had good need of iron and steel. They didn't pay top rate, hardly ever did, but some coin was better than none at all. Sometimes he had to run the supplies himself, and sometimes that took longer than he would have liked, yet he almost always got paid in the end. And when he didn't, well, he had his hammer. This latest job, for instance, just saw him coming back from particularly far afield. Or was it a seer? Fancy posh pricks in their words. Regardless, he'd been gone for a while this time. He stowed his little boat in a sheltered cove and covered it with a tattered tarp, then weighed that down with heavy stones to keep it secure. From there, he retrieved his satchel, slung his hammer round his shoulders, made sure his money pouch was stowed inside his tunic. He'd learned his lesson after a cheeky cut-purse snatched a week's worth of wages off him, and looked to the horizon. He could see King's Landing looming above him in the distance, framed against the light of the setting sun. Home, such as it was. He was eager to get back. His wife was pregnant, you see, and the missus wasn't doing so well. Good reason for that, and he knew it was his fault. Money was scarce, which meant food was scarcer still. Ergo, they needed more coin, which meant more work. Round and round it went, like a dragon chasing its own tail. It burned knowing that his efforts weren't enough, knowing that no matter how hard he tried, safety and security were just out of their reach. This couldn't be all there was in life. He was meant for more than this. He had to be. He just knew it. He'd left Mum long ago to make a living with his own two hands, and by the gods he would do so or die trying. But at this rate, it seemed he'd be dealing with the latter rather than the former. Maybe it was time to give up on the smuggling business and rededicate himself to his craft. Surely he could make something that would fetch a higher price than this. Or maybe take his missus to Tumbleton. She had family there, though it galled him to be indebted to them. No, that wouldn't work. She was too far along, and he didn't dare put her at risk. Anything was better than this miserable existence. Wiping a bead of sweat from his brow, he began the long walk back up to the capital. It would be good to see her again, to spend whatever time they had left together. A dragon's roar split the air, and Hugh froze, rooted where he stood. Aghast, he followed the sound and looked up just in time to see a massive shadow swoop low over the beachhead. It was a massive beast, easily the largest he'd ever seen in all his life. And it saw him. Shading his face with one hand, he squinted up at the behemoth, unable to move. Dragons wasn't gods, he knew. They were just meat, but they were mighty indeed. And all he had was his hammer. Imagine his surprise then, when the beast swooped low and landed before him. There was nowhere to run. By the time he thought to, it was already too late, and the dragon was upon him. It was immense. Its wings blotted out the sun. Its shadow seemed to swallow the very world. It had terrifying scales, weathered by years of combat, harder than rock. A strange feeling beat within his chest as he craned his neck back to look up at it. Dragons weren't gods. Hugh knew that, but it was awful hard to argue when one got up in your face. Much to his chagrin, the bronze beast lumbered forward with frightful speed, thrust its head forward, and screamed at him. Hugh stood stock still, squinting, beard bristling, hair blasted as the dragon's fetid breath assaulted his visage. He glimpsed the fire swelling within in his throat and saw his death in those flames. Was this the end? Would he die here on the beach, unremarked, alone? Who would take care of his wife? Their child. Without him, she would... His temper stirred deep within, raging against the inevitable. Something snapped. He saw red. No, not like this. He wouldn't go out like this. He absolutely refused to die with a whimper on his lips. Snarling, he tore the hammer from his shoulder, brandished it in the face of the bronze fury, and roared with all his might. Come on! The dragon reared back abruptly, surprised, paused now, considered him anew. Silence reigned, until it didn't. Interesting. He acknowledges you. Belatedly, Hugh glimpsed the speck of a rider sat atop its back then. He was unable to see them, silhouetted as they were against the setting sun. A rich, regal voice spoke to him from the unseen figure. Hugh Hammer. I? He held tight to his hammer. Who's asking? Someone dismounted from the dragon. His eyes bulged. That was the bloody king! Crown upon his head, dressed in dark leathers, sword at his side and all. Looked like he knew how to use the latter too. Self-preservation quenched his rage and he slammed down to a knee. Your Grace? Viserys gestured with one hand. Rise. Hugh did, still clutching his hammer, almost daring to hope. How can I be of service? A pause followed. I understand you have a wife. Bloody spies in this bloody cesspit of a city. Still, he didn't dare lie. I do, my lord. And she is with child, correct? She is, my lord. My lord, the king leaned forward gravely to correct him. You'll need to work on that. My lord? Hugh amended, bowing his head. I'm afraid I don't understand. Why are you here? The king smiled. I believe you know the answer already. Did he? No, surely not him. He couldn't be so lucky, and yet to have it dangled before him. He knelt hurriedly. Your Grace? Tell me. The king considered him for a long moment. Who was your mother? Hugh blanched. That is a long story. 0.0. Ulf drank, then drank some more for good measure. Drinking helped keep the fear away, you see. Drowned it, before it could drown him. But there wasn't enough wine in all the world to save him. Not really. Not from himself. He knew what was happening. Dragons flying about, all these royal muckety-mucks scouring Flea Bottom from top to, well, bottom. They was looking for Targaryens. Bastards. Ergo him, Mum had always told him. He'd never believed her. Not really. Not deep down. He wasn't afraid. Ha! He told a lie. He'd soiled his trousers long ago. If they came for him, they'd fight him right here, sitting in his chair, drink in hand. Maybe if he was soused enough, he wouldn't feel the blade. As though, summoned by that very thought, something jabbed him in the back. You're a difficult man to find. A low chuckle sent shivers shooting down his spine. And who are you? Blast. And he wasn't even proper drunk yet. Ulf didn't dare turn around. He dropped his drink and raised his hands in the air. Nobody at all? Lie to me again, and I'll cut out your tongue. Whomever was behind him scoffed and jabbed cold steel into his back. Move, bastard! We have places to be. Gods be good. It sounded like the bloody prince. Ulf raised his hand higher, gulping but a little as he found himself frog-marched out the tavern. All right, I'm walking. What did the bloody royals want with a down-on-his-luck bastard anyway? Not to kill him, surely. They would have done that by now, otherwise. Sent a message proper and all, that they hadn't worried him to no end. Which begged the question then, why was he still alive? And where were they taking him? Chapter 23. We're not just our failures. As much as they hurt, we learn from them. Then we go out there and do our best to make up for them, even though we never will. We save people. We help people. As many as we can to make up for those we couldn't. That's what we do. What I do. And I wouldn't change it for the world. Tilda a legend. Raise an army. The arrival of Hugh and Ulf was met with no fanfare. No applause, no feasting, no revels. Nothing at all. Indeed, Naruto didn't truly realize the Targaryen bastards were present in the Red Keep at first. Granted, he'd known Demon and the king had gone to collect them, but he hadn't expected to encounter them just yet. Thus, when the king summoned him from the training yard to his chambers directly, even then he assumed it was for more wedding preparations or some such. More fittings, more words of advice, that sort of thing. All to prepare him for what was to come. Besides, his mind was decidedly elsewhere at the moment. Even now he was still reeling from it all as he stumbled through the halls. Marriage, pregnancy, family. By the sage, he was going to be a father. Mum and Dad would be so proud. It still didn't feel real, not here, not now, not yet. Sure, he'd always wanted to get married and start a family, but that had been in his world. He understood his world. He liked his world. The elemental nations weren't the best place to live, sure, but at least they made sense. Back home, if someone like Otto Hightower ticked him off, he'd just punch him, you know? Fight him, befriend him. Let bygones be bygones, that sort of thing. And if that failed, well, there was always the all Bijudama to send someone packing if they were truly irredeemable. Folks respected strength. Westeros was an entirely different beast. He'd learned that long ago, but only now was he truly beginning to understand it. You couldn't go and slug someone here, because apparently that sort of thing was frowned upon. Everywhere he looked, there were schemes within schemes, backstabbing, backbiting, and betrayal in this seemingly endless Game of Thrones. Honestly, the spiky chair didn't look all that comfortable. He couldn't fathom why everyone wanted to plant their keister on it. More power to them, he supposed. A few years ago, if someone had told him he'd be marrying a princess, he would have laughed his head off. Him? Royalty? No thanks. He liked Rhaenyra because was blunt and clever. defiant and energetic. They were just good friends, right? Yep, definitely. Then, later, when his feelings on the matter matured and he gradually found himself attracted to Rhaenyra, he hadn't dared to dream she would ever reciprocate those feelings. Who could possibly love him? She was a Targaryen princess who might become queen, and him? He was restless and chaotic, unable to sit still, oftentimes dense as a brick through no fault but his own, wholly unable to understand Westerosi politics. Call him thick, call him a meathead, but there it was. Romance was a sore subject for him. The one time he thought he'd loved someone, he'd gone and loused it up, misread the signals, and made an arse of himself. Sakura had always loved Sasuke, and he'd been blind to that for a good long while before realizing the truth. And he was okay with that. Really, he was. It was an old scar, one that had mostly healed. So he'd held back, kept Rhaenyra at a distance, refusing to make a mistake. And it worked for a while, until it didn't. When that night on Dragonstone came, it felt like forever ago now. He thought himself lucky beyond measure. Rhaenyra felt the same. Against all odds, he'd managed to catch her eye, and she was actually quite fond of him. Better yet, her parents were delighted by such a match. He'd been content then, believed she was more than enough for him, unworthy as he was. Now she was carrying his unborn child, and that brought on a whole host of feelings that he didn't know what to do with. But somewhere along the way, he'd incidentally garnered Alicent Eyre's attention as well. Rhaenyra had battered and begged, then beseeched him to try with her, until he finally gave in. And the rest, as they say, was history. What was the old saying? Some old biddy said it once. He couldn't recall. Love is a hurricane? Yeah, that about summed it up. They meshed together well, the three of them. Kurama chuckled. Very well indeed. Heat speared through his cheeks at the thought. Just thinking of it made him dizzy sometimes. Who knows? In time she'll bear you many children of her own. Steam. His face was caught in a sauna and red like roses. Stop, stop, stop! I'm going to pass out at this rate. But he digressed. Back to the present, yes. He wasn't at all focused on the Targaryen bastards at the moment. Neither Ulf nor Hugh particularly factored into his plans going forward at the moment. Surely he wouldn't be able to meet them yet, and when he finally did, it would probably be in a controlled setting of some sort with everyone watching him. Imagine his surprise then, when he entered the room and found a stout man with an impressive beard and his very pregnant wife awaiting him within the king's chambers. Naruto blinked. He blinked hard. Right, that had to be Hugh and his wife. No sign of Ulf, which could only mean the man was elsewhere, or more likely, Demon had dragged him somewhere. Startled as he was, he briefly considered making a fuss about that, then immediately thought better of it. Perhaps it was for the best given the nature of their arrival. If the whole of the Red Keep knew of them beforehand, they'd hardly be a weapon against Otto now, would they? And his time was coming. Make no mistake. The date was set, the decision made, the die cast. For now, it fell to him to deal with these strange newcomers. The request that Viserys made even stranger still. Would you mind taking a look at them? You want me to do what? No, wait. He glanced askance to the right, realizing someone was absent. Where's Rhaenyra? She was here a moment ago. Emma sounded strangely smug as she sat in a heavily cushioned chair with a curious Visenya nestled in her arms. Alicent swept her off somewhere. Right, she'd fainted before when Rhaenyra broke the news, hadn't she? Which meant her and Rhaenyra alone together, talking her pregnancy and girl things. Nope, not getting involved in that conversation. Demons off making Ulf presentable. Viserys rose from his own chair, planted a hand on his shoulder and answered his unspoken question before he could think to ask it. That one was in dire need of a bath and a drying out besides. In the meantime, I had thought you might wish to meet our new guests and make certain they're healthy. Ah, he meant the baby. Naruto looked to Hugh and his wife, each of whom knelt quickly his gaze. Wait, why were they doing that? Stop that. He bid them rise with a quick gesture and a baffled noise, heedless of the king's amusement. There's no need to kneel here, not to me. And you are? Someone must have given her that dress to wear. She didn't seem used to it at all. And you are? The pregnant woman offered a clumsy curtsy as best her belly would allow. We're cat, your grace. Naruto sputtered. You're what now? Hugh shrugged a broad shoulder. You're the king of the narrow sea. It's in the name. The noise Naruto made might have been a close cousin to a whine. I ain't a king. The bastard blinked. Then why do they call you King of the Narrow Sea? He flung up his arms in aggravations. I literally gave up that crown. Hugh met his stare evenly, darn him. A warrior is a warrior even without his sword, and a king is still a king, crown or no. Huh. I like this one. He's honest. Of course Kurama would. Hurdle SS of the byplay, Viserys chuckled and clapped him on the back, leaning into the subject with relish. Should I fear for my crown now, son-in-law? Naruto made angry Naruto noises and glared at him. No, you don't. You're not saddling me with this crazy kingdom. Pity. The merry monarch laughed anew. And here I had thought to renounce my crown and retire to Essos. Don't even joke about that, old man. Now. Aemma smiled indulgently, running a hand through the pale wisps of Visenya's hair. They're new to court. Have mercy on them. That said, still speaking, she looked back to the mother-to-be. We cannot go calling you Cat. The lords and ladies will have field day with that. Catherine, then? Viserys suggested. It's not so different from her actual name. Aemma perked up. I rather like that. She smiled and looked down at her youngest daughter. What say you, dearest? Visenya clapped her hands with a happy cry. I think she likes it. Hugh shrugged a broad shoulder. Sounds like a proper lady, and it isn't so different from her real name. It's fine with me. All eyes turned to Naruto, much to his dismay. Why the heck did he have the last say here, oi? Sure, I guess. Viserys clapped his hands and beamed at Cat. And there you have it. I hope you don't mind. The mother-to-be flushed prettily. If it pleases your grace. It does indeed. He granted her a magnanimous smile and looked to Hugh. Yours, however, is a good name. A strong name. I dare say anyone who gives you trouble will be met with more than harsh words. The corner of Hugh's mouth twitched, just so. And a hammer besides, your grace, Viserys scoffed. But please call me cousin. We are kin, are we not? Hugh nodded stiffly. Apologies. We're still adjusting. I imagine so. Bale stirred where he lay, huffed once, and lay back down. Unimpressed. Hugh looked past him. Oi, is it safe to have that thing laying about? Aemma hummed and stroked the dragonling's head, drawing a pleased trill from the little black beast. Be assured he means you no harm. Cat now, Catherine, he supposed, still eyed Visenya's dragon warily. Are you sure? I am. Her smile sharpened. If he considered you a danger, we would not be having this conversation. So long as you are kind to Visenya, so too will he be to you. Hugh glanced to Emma's daughter, as though just now noticing her, and his face softened. She looks strong, that one. She'll grow up to be a fighter. Naruto elevated his opinion of the man every so slightly, from one soon-to-be father to another. Aemma preened, pleased by his praise. I'm so glad you agree. Now then, Viserys continued apace, you may not know it, but Lord Naruto is a renowned healer, and I brought him here for a reason. Catherine blinked. Is he a maester in disguise? Not quite. Naruto tilted his head and let them banter on a bit as he made his introductions, mind whirling. If memory served, Hugh was technically first cousin to Viserys and Daemon, while Ulf would be a half-brother to them both. By that very logic, Rhaenyra and baby Visenya had two new uncles. Bloodlines were so confusing. Shaking his head, he looked back to Rhaenyra's old man and decided to cut the crap. You want me to look in on the kiddo? He jerked an elbow Catherine's way. Is that why I'm here? Viserys nodded, pleased by his deduction. If you please. I would prefer to avoid another near disaster as Aemma suffered. His wife squeezed his hand and Naruto felt any lingering annoyance he might have felt melt away. How could he possibly say no to that? Fane! Hugh hovered protectively like the proud papa he was as he drew near. That much he could understand. Respect even. Fathers protected their family, their children most of all. When he made to reach for her, however, the bastard grabbed his wrist and his gaze strayed back to his wife. His expression said it all, his words more so. What do you think you're doing? Making sure your child is healthy. Naruto met the man's gaze without fear, unflinching. Or would you rather she be born with a weakened immune system? Perhaps a fatal birth defect? All right, maybe that last bit of sass was unnecessary. Wherever had his patience gone? He used to have more than this. Cat sighed, diverting his thoughts. Let him be, husband. What's the harm? Hugh released him with a grunt, albeit warily. If you hurt her, he beamed. Wouldn't dream of it, big guy. Do not call me that. Aha! Weakness detected. Too late, definitely calling you that. In short order, Emma helped ease Catherine around Visery's sculpture of old Valyria and onto the bed near. The poor woman accepted gratefully and lay down, a sure sign of her exhaustion. Now that he noticed, she really didn't look well. Had she been eating enough? Her dark eyes flitted to his, breath hitching a little. Please be gentle. His inner healer took over. Nothing simpler. From there, he laid a hand on her round stomach, closed his eyes, and opened his sixth sense to the world. An erratic array of emotions assailed him at once. With but a frown, he tunneled his focus inward, fixating upon the burgeoning babe in her belly. This was different from Emma's pregnancy. He'd been rushed and harried at the time with the little one and her mother, too preoccupied with delivery and saving both their lives to really delve deep and comprehend what he was seeing. Now he had more mastery than he did that day. Now he eased into the process, seeking a single point of brilliance. Kat was an easy fix. He mended some malnutrition and gave her a bit of energy, heedless of the gasp she gave, and nipped a few other health problems in the bud. The baby wasn't hard to find. Hello there, Tilda. A tether of tentative consciousness touched his, tiny and frail, unable to yet speak. Foreign sensations cascaded through his mind one after the other. She was warm, she was safe, she was comfortable, but did not wish to leave the warm place. She was afraid of him. She did not know who or what he was. Wait a minute. She? A fierce flare or pride sparked in him. Kat was having a girl. He must tell everyone. Affixing his focus to the present, he returned to the matter at hand, though not without a pleased chuckle. Wow. Uncle Naruto really has a nice ring to it, you know. With a butter thought, he eased her fears and went to work. Kat's kid was relatively healthy for the most part, insomuch as any child could be in Westeros. A few minor defects, weak lungs, he got to fixing those right away. From there, he nipped a propensity for coughing in the bud and worked to strengthen her immune system, making it strong and healthy. And while he worked, he gave the girl's DNA just a little nudge. He was doing her a favor, really. If she took after her mother, the entire court would mock her. But if she held to the genetic code of her father, if she was born looking like a true Targaryen with pale hair and violet eyes, surely she would lead an easier life. Not one entirely free from scorn. No one did, but a better one. He took the strands of Targaryen DNA and gave them another push, weaving them deeper, urging them to manifest over that of the mother's traits. Was it not his duty, nay, his purpose, to make things easier for such an intrepid soul? For a moment his vision flashed and he found himself somewhere else. Hurry up, slowpoke. A young Targaryen girl raced past him in the courtyard ahead of him, wearing the dark leather of a dragon rider. He glimpsed tan skin, deep violet eyes and pale hair the colour of snow, her hair almost boyishly short. A wild and reckless grin wreathed her impish face as she slung herself onto a young dragon's back, a beautiful blue beast that distantly resembled Dreamfire. The Misitary girl plonked herself down into the saddle with a pleased noise, then turned his way to wave. He jolted, surprised that she was somehow able to see him, interact with him. "Hurry up and get on your dragon already, uncle!" She tossed her head impatiently, long hair swaying in the wind. "We're going to be late." Aegon's about to be born. "Slow down, Arya." His mouth moved of its own accord, refusing to obey him. To his dismay, "It's just a quick flight across the bay to Dragonstone." She looked past him and her grin grew, voice gaining a decidedly teasing lilt. "Tell that to him, silly." An almighty shadow fell over his back, punctuated by an irritated, impatient hiss of breath. Her voice sounded terribly far away all of a sudden. "He's been waiting for you." Oh. Something nudged his back and nearly bowled him over. With all his speed, he whirled to greet it. Not fast enough, not nearly enough. Reality snapped back like a rubber band, denying him a glimpse of his steed, leaving him blinking stars from his vision. Kurama groaned something that sounded suspiciously like a curse in his head. Whatever had affected him had clearly left him dazed as well. This was someone important. He wasn't sure how he knew, only that he did. "Well?" Kat nudged him, anxious. "How's the babe?" He took his hand from her belly and stood, still reeling a little. "She's fine." Then, almost as an afterthought, "It's a girl." Hugh perked up, even as Kat gasped. "How do you know?" "I just do." He wasn't in any mood to explain. "She'll be just fine." Viserys saw his days, bless him, and swooped in to change the subject. "Did you have a name picked out?" "For a boy, aye." Kat murmured, dumbfounded. We were going to name our son Egon. Naruto twitched in the background and bit his lip to stifle a gasp. Just what was it with him, having visions of Targaryens? But a girl. Hugh ran a hand through his beard. Never gave much thought to it. Naruto closed his eyes. Arya would be a good name. The name had significance, even as he spoke it aloud. Power. It was both the name of no one and someone, of one who had yet to exist, of another who would be born more than 100 years from now. A girl who in another life, who would one day know the name of every dragon and very much wished she too was born a Targaryen, sword and dragon and all. Visenya would have a lively childhood friend indeed. Hugh nodded, pleased by the sound. Aye, that sounds like a good one. I'll consider it. Kat scowled at her husband. We shall discuss that later, husband. She looked like she might protest further, but when Hugh looked to her, she faltered. Viserys took the initiative before either of them could think to speak. Kneel, if you would. They did so, or rather Hugh did. Poor Kat was in no state to kneel at the moment, so they let her lay abed a while longer. Naruto, for his part, found himself forced to play the part of the unfortunate witness once more, to watch now as Viserys rose from his chair and laid a hand on Hugh's shoulder. From this day until your last day, you are Hugh Targaryen, cousin of Viserys Targaryen, protector of the realm and the 7 kingdoms. Rhaenyra's father looked to the awestruck Kat next. And it is my great pleasure to officiously make the acquaintance of your lawfully wedded wife, the Lady Catherine Targaryen. There it was, the declaration made clear, the words set in stone. There could be no taking them back now. Naruto hoped they were for the best. You honor us beyond measure. Hugh surprised the lot of them by bowing his head further still. Begging your pardon, your grace, cousin. Viserys corrected him with faux sternness. Cousin, he amended in return. You've given us so much, and I know I shouldn't ask for more, but once our little one is born... He hesitated, either unable or unwilling to finish that sentence. Ah! Viserys caught on quickly, proving his intellect once more. You wish for a dragon egg to be laid in your daughter's cradle, do you not? Naruto's brow shot straight into his hair. He'd not expected that. Hugh practically prostrated himself. I know I've no right to ask one for myself given my upbringing, and I won't. The poor father to be practically stumbled over his words in his haste to get them out the way. But surely she deserves to be a proper princess, to live the life Kat and I never had. I don't see why not. Emma piped up. It is tradition after all, and you've just legitimized them. Viserys stroked his chin and pretended to consider it. Some may make a fuss, the Queen scoffed in return. Hang the council and the court. You're the king, not them. Naruto threw his weight behind her words. Weren't you the one saying we had a surplus of eggs this year? Viserys chuckled. You always see to the heart of me. Very well. After your daughter's birth, she shall be granted an egg for her cradle. He could see he wanted to grant Hugh one as well, but for once he held himself in moderation. You have my word. There will be an official proclamation just before the wedding, the king continued. Make no mistake, this is a dangerous game we've drawn you into. Defeat is not an option. Hugh adopted a rueful grin. Then we had best win, cousin. Emma chuckled softly. Rhaenys will like this one. Naruto blew out a sigh. I'll just be going then. 0.0. Sir Kriston Cole absolutely despised Lord Naruto Uzumaki. Perhaps that wasn't quite right. He also respected him, envied him. He wanted to be him. Everything that he was, everything that he had accomplished, everything he would ever be, all gained through blind bloody luck. 7 hells? It wasn't fair. All that he had, he owed to the princess. Were it not for her, he would still be a humble hedge knight. By her word, he had gained an honour that no other Cole before him had ever known. The Kingsguard. There could be no higher honour. He would go down in history as one of the most accomplished knights of the realm. He would live out the rest of his days serving the woman he secretly loved, and her children, then her children's children after her. Rhaenyra would never know how he truly felt for her. His feelings would remain unrequited. And for a time, he was content, until he came. He had at least been a knight, but Naruto was nothing. By all accounts, a lowborn with not even armor or a sword to his name. He'd paid him little mind at first, thought him merely another victim of the princess' kindness, one who would be forgotten in time. How wrong he had been. Instead, he found himself forced to watch as the baffling blonde bastard, quite literally in his mind, failed his way upward into greatness. Until he was no longer a pauper. Until he became a knight, then a lord. And now, if the rumours were to be believed, he may well become a prince. Possibly even a king. And there was naught he could do to stop him. He was powerless. How he hated it. Of what use was his sword arm against a man who could destroy islands? Granted, he hadn't been there to bear witness to the deed himself, but he'd heard the stories, listened to the sailors and Lord Valarian's men alike. One man telling such a fanciful story in a tavern was an accident, another on the docks a possible coincidence, but a third in the streets of Flea Bottom. Then a fourth, fifth, sixth. That was a pattern. It beggared belief. He was a weapon of mass destruction, death incarnate, and yet he pretended to be human. How it galled him. Something had to be done. No, something must be done. And as for Cole himself, what was he without the princess? Nothing. No, less than nothing. A warrior trapped in a thankless task, sworn for life. Now he was left adrift, wandering the halls like a ghost. Rhaenyra avoided him these days. She was all but lost to him. Naruto did not, and was not. Whether out of arrogance of ignorance, he knew not, but the fact remained. Cole watched him leave the king's chambers in a rush now, and after a moment, followed him at a measurable distance. If he was at all aware of him, he did little to show it. He waited until the princess's paramour was alone practicing in the yard, working himself through another set of relentless drills. He worked over a pair of straw dummies as though they had insulted his mother, battering them with vicious blows until they were naught but so much straw and sackcloth at his feet. A practice blade landed at Cole's feet with an audible clack and belatedly realised he'd been discovered. He looked down at it, then to the young man in question. Baleful blue eyes blazed back at him as Naruto levelled a hard stare his way. If you're here to fight, then pick up a sword. I could use the practice. Cole considered it for a long moment, then thought better of it. For now. May we speak? Credit where it was due. The blonde quickly recognised the trap and made to leave. I don't think we have anything to talk about. If you're not going to spar, Cole moved to block him and he blew out an annoyed breath. There it was. A brief spark of blue anger in his eyes. For a moment, just a moment, he felt an awful weight pushed down against his shoulders, as though some great and terrible beast were glaring back at him from within the blonde's gaze. Perhaps that was true. Perhaps not. Either way, he'd come too far to back out now. And so he stifled a scowl, mastered his fear, and bade himself speak. I would discuss the princess with you. Rhaenyra. Naruto scoffed, unamused by the subject. She can fight her own battles. A lone muscle jumped in Cole's jaw despite his best efforts. The soon-to-be prince noticed. Is there a problem? Cole growled. You are unworthy of her. I am. Of all the words he'd expected to hear, those were not one of them. Cole paused, taken aback. I beg your pardon, sir? Naruto planted a fist on his hip. You heard me. The casual admission left Cole reeling even more, and the words that followed threatened to floor him altogether. I don't deserve her. She's a princess and I'm, well, me. A small laugh tumbled past his lips as he indicated himself with a gloved hand. Frankly, I don't know what she sees in me. I'm a mess. She could have chosen anyone but me and been better off. His hackles rose at the very insinuation. Then why follow her? Because I love her. Naruto jabbed back. And she loves me. For that, I'll follow her to the end of my days. How those words burned. How they stung. It should have been me, not this blonde braggart of a boy. You would follow her, even if it means your death? Cole. The laughter that followed wasn't warm. It was cold, bringing with it an ominous chill. I've been dead ever since I first set foot in your word, dying of 1,000 cuts. Wait, world? What world? What did he mean by that? Naruto didn't give him the chance to ponder it. Stooping low, he snatched up the blunted blade he'd cast at his feet. A flick of the wrist sent it whirling his way. Cole caught it. This was a bad idea. A terrible idea. Temptation whispered to him, demanding an outlet for his rage. Naruto strode over to the rack and retrieved a longsword of his own. The Valyrian steel sword at his belt remained sheathed. Sketching a lazy salute, he waited for him to engage. A moment passed. Then another, followed by yet another. Still he did not engage. Still that small smirk of a smile tormented him. A scarlet haze crept into the edge of his vision. He couldn't stand it. Cole lunged. Naruto parried him quickly. Almost at once he could see that the boy wasn't skilled with the sword. Not exceptionally. His footwork wasn't quite right, but his strength and speed made up for that. He preferred to brave the blade with both hands for one, and it showed. Their first clash put Cole on the back foot. He recovered quickly and closed the distance, swinging low. Steel met steel as their blades locked and clashed. Cole growled at him, voice low. "You let the king bring bastards into the keep." An irritated expression crossed the whiskered warrior's visage. "I did no such thing." "Then why help them at all?" He ground it out through clenched teeth. "They're beneath us." "Beneath you." Naruto broke their blade lock and kicked him in the chest, sending him stumbling back. He considered him for a long moment before advancing, blue eyes sparking. "You have only strength for yourself." "I have enough to spare." Cole bridled, but the blonde wasn't done with him. His sword flitted out to riposte only for an overhand smash to sweep it away and smash into his side. It sparked brightly off his armor. Cole felt his ribs bruise beneath it. Naruto's sword swept for his knees in a streak of surly silver, forcing him to block with a gauntlet out of position as he was. He felt the armor there creak ominously as his wrist fractured. If a single family is a burden to you, then how do you expect to protect the royal family themselves? Cole switched hands, grimacing. They would be a burden. Of course it's a burden. A weaving web of steel slashed his blade aside and drove the hilt of the blade into his skull, causing him to see stars. Life is a burden. The burden you swore to carry when you swore to serve the Kingsguard. Abandoning them would be worse than killing them. Something was speaking through him, a being old and ancient, and he was powerless to resist, barely able to retaliate as his hated foe forced him back, then back again, raining down blow after blow upon him. Dazed as he was, it was all Cole could do to defend himself from the storm of swords and swords that followed. Are you so frail as to consider that a great burden upon you? Clash! Are you so uncoordinated and incompetent with handling your sword that you cannot swing it when your heart is clouded? Smash! Are you so immersed in your delusions that you would put your needs before that of innocence? Thrash! If so, it's a travesty you even consider yourself a Kingsguard. An open palm slammed into his armor, denting it to hurl him backwards. He struck a wall and slumped down it, winded. Cold steel kissed his neck before he could think to rise, pinning him there. Sinister scarlet slits stared down at him, bestial and inhuman. No longer were they blue. Well, had the blue gone? He'd happily take that colour over this soul-searing scarlet. Naruto scowled down at him, his expression torn between disgust and outright fury. Well, what do you have to say for yourself? Something broke deep inside Cole then. It felt like his pride. Rhaenyra changed my life. The words poured out of him in a broken babble as he shouted up at the impassive blonde that had bested him so easily. It was she who chose me, she who made me more than I was, she who raised me up to this. Since then, she has become the flame I follow. But you, he choked on the words and the bitterness they brought. You took her, snatched her away like she was always meant to be yours without so much how a second thought. You know naught how it feels. His head slumped, chin tucked against his chin. Desire for women has brought me grief after grief. Naruto stowed his sword and glowered down at him with a flicker of pity. Then resisted. Bitter laughter tumbled out of him. Would that it was so simple. Your brothers in the Kingsguard find a way. Cole wheezed a sigh. Do they? Perhaps so. He amended at the blonde's thunderous scowl. Or perhaps all men are corrupt. Even you. And true honor is a mist that melts in the morning. To die without that would be a kind of relief, don't you think? The blonde barely blinked. I didn't come here to trade philosophy with you. I no longer have a philosophy. Or rather, my philosophy was this. Cole set a hand to his true sword, fighting the urge to unsheath it, knowing such would truly be his end. To protect the righteous and dispense justice on the rest. You ruined that. Wherever you go, you wade into battle like the storm kings of old, and men are like dust under your feet. And all our fine thoughts and all our endeavours are as nothing. Will you even recognise yourself by the end? Will you even recognise yourself by the end? Naruto shook his head. We're more than the sum of our parts. We're not just our failures. As much as they hurt, we learn from them. Then we go out there and do our best to make up for them. Even though, sometimes, we never will. We save people. We help people. As many as we can to make up for those we couldn't. That's what we do. What I do. And I wouldn't change it for the world. Naive. Cole scoffed at it, blinded by bitterness. Then you are blind to your own flaws and faults. Just like Oi! Naruto seized him by the wrist and, in a blur, hauled him upright to his feet. Now listen, bub. You better end that sentence real carefully, or you and me. We're gonna have a problem. Cole shoved him and Naruto released him. He had the faintest realization the blonde was humoring him. The only problem here is you. You're the one standing in the way of peace. If that's what you call peace, then I don't want peace. He stared back at him. I want problems always. His piece said. He walked past him, paused, and clapped him on the shoulder. Live well, Sir Kristen. Or don't. It doesn't matter me anymore. Cole's terrible temper stirred, sparked, snapped now. Rounding on the blonde, he drew his blade. Kill me, then. Naruto kept walking. Cole gave chase. Kill me! You know. The blonde paused and craned his neck back to regard him. Odd. His eyes were blue once more. Not so long ago I would have taken you up on that. Now, I don't think I will. An incredulous noise built in the back of his throat. Why? Because death is clearly what you want, Naruto drawled, pitching his voice as one might toward a petulant child. And I'm not going to give it to you. Cole twitched, livid. Attack me or don't. A palm flicked his way in clear dismissal. End your own life, if you find it to be such a drag. You want to go out honorably? Do it on your terms. I'll bury you, I'll forget you, and I'll move on. But know this. A finger rose his way, jabbing at his dented breastplate. No one will remember you. No songs will be sung of no tales told of your deeds. Either way, planting both hands in his pockets, he stalked away from him. I wish you good fortune in the wars to come. Cole sank to his knees in defeat and despair. Naruto kept walking, paying him no heed. He couldn't let it end like this. 0.00.0. I can't believe you're pregnant. Alicent, please stop fussing over me. I'm hardly going to shatter on you. You say that now, but the two of you made me faint. Am I not allowed a bit of excitement? Rhaenyra supposed she was owed that much, but it didn't stop her from flushing anew as Alicent ran both hands over her stomach for what felt like the umpteenth time this afternoon. She seemed fascinated by her child, fixated on it, much to her dismay. Even now, a fresh surge of heat warmed her cheeks as her childhood friend caressed the faint bump in her belly. Mother had been bad enough, but her dear friend simply wouldn't let her be. Stop it! She batted her hands away to regard herself in the mirror. Oh, you'll ruin my dress. At this, her beloved paused, if only for a moment, but not for long. Alicent's chin came down over her shoulder, cheek nuzzling hers as she embraced her from behind. In a rare moment of boldness, her fingers drifted lower past her belly, caressing her. For once, it was Rhaenyra's turn to shiver. Blast! She was growing bolder. At this rate, she'd be the one teasing her in no time at all. Pushing aside that strangely pleasant thought, she considered herself in the mirror for a moment anew, struggling to make sense of the stranger staring back at her. Go try on your dress, little dragon. Mother had prodded her oh so very gently as only a parent could. We'll be along shortly. How quaint. She scarcely recognized herself. Who was this gorgeous young woman staring back at her? Alicent cooed over her. This is wonderful. You're going to be a mother. Easy for you to say. It feels strange. Her friend hummed against her. You look lovely. Rhaenyra glared at her. You say that now, but I've not yet seen you in your dress. Here at last, the Hightower girl squeaked, courage finally faltering. You will, in good time. The princess preened at the promise. I'm looking forward to it. She'd only glimpsed it in passing once at the seamstress, but it looked grand. Otto Hightower would have a conniption when he saw it. She couldn't wait to see Alicent in those glorious colours, and to peel her out of them. They lapsed into comfortable silence for a time, regarding one another in the mirror. Rhaenyra revelled in it. For once in her life, everything was turning out well for her, proceeding as planned. There had been a number of hiccups, of course. There always were in life. But here at last, she felt it would be smooth sailing going forward. For a time, at least. Alicent found her voice first, holding her just a little tighter. Have you thought on a name for the babe? Naruto and I already told Mother. Jacaerys or Tywin if it's a boy. Helena for a girl. Her expression wrenched a little. I'd wanted to name my daughter such. A pale brow rose. Oh, Tild, are you so eager to get with child yourself? She didn't miss the flash of panic in her eyes. No, not at all. Aha! She revealed her true intentions! Someone was jealous, Tilda. Rhaenyra rounded on her, pivoting away from the mirror to writhe in her grasp and embrace her friend in return. Alicent offered a token resistance, nothing more, melting into her grasp like warm pudding as a hand rose to cup her cheek. It wasn't enough to satisfy her, not nearly enough. She bit her lip, squirming in place. "Perhaps I can distract you from such thoughts," she crooned. "You've but to ask." Alicent's gaze flitted down to her lips, an invitation just for her. Rhaenyra accepted it and leaned in to kiss her hungrily, lips lingering over hers with scorching passion. To her great delight, Alicent responded in kind, mouth melding marvellously with her own. She'd grown bolder about this. Her hands drifted lower to grip her rear, even as her own palms came up between them to caress her breasts. "Wait a moment," she gasped between kisses when she began to unlace the back of her dress. "Not here. We shouldn't—" She pulled away and kissed her cheek, drawing a whine from the redhead. "Shall I lock the door, then? What of Naruto? Where has he wandered off to this time?" Rhaenyra shrugged. "He'll find his way back to us. He always does." As though summoned by that very thought, the door to Alicent's chamber came crashing open. 0.0. Naruto entered the room and stopped short, pausing just long enough to lock the door behind him. And then his breath was stolen away. Oh! Rhaenyra looked absolutely resplendent in a long white dress stitched in a scale-like pattern, slender arms wreathed in golden bracelets, a necklace of pure gold wreathed around her neck, long hair bound in elegant plaits atop her head, bedecked and bejeweled with rubies, tapering off into a braided ponytail of sorts that stopped just between her shoulders. If this was how she looked now, then he couldn't imagine what she'd wear for their actual wedding. Likely something far more formidable than this. Regardless she looked, by the sage, he didn't have words for how she looked. Alicent was also standing beside her, face terribly aflush as she adjusted her dress. She studiously averted her eyes when he looked her way. Strange, he had the oddest feeling he'd interrupted something. Rhaenyra stared at him for a long moment, crossed both arms over her bosom and huffed. "All right, say it. I look awful." "Far from it. You look beautiful." "Truly?" Her face lit up and her eyes flitted up and down the length of him. "You don't look all that bad yourself." He supposed he didn't at the moment, despite his scrap with Cole. "I wish I was wearing armor." A chuckle escaped him. "As do I." "Really?" "Oh, please." She gave his chest a gentle shove. "You'd look good in anything you wear." "I, on the other hand," she gestured in exasperation to her dress. "How am I to move in this? What if I'm attacked?" He chortled. "I suppose you have your knives." "Just one." She patted her upper leg, drawing a squeak from Alicent. "Strapped to my thigh. It wasn't as though I could hide it anywhere else." Alicent coughed into a fist. Perhaps we should speak of the dragon in the room first." A slow flush seared up the back of Naruto's neck. "And what's that?" She stared at him. "I wish to speak of children." Naruto's mouth went dry, words failing him. "Happily!" Rhaenyra swooped in with a smile at the change of subject. "I'd be delighted to discuss it at great length with the both of you." Quick as lightning, she reached behind Alicent's back, finding the strings of her dress and yanked. The Hightower girl yelped as her garments slipped and retaliated in kind, doing the same unto Rhaenyra. In a matter of moments, they were wrestling with one another. Naruto tried to protest before they could finish, really, he did. He even had the forethought to step forward and try to stop them. Too late, the ladies' dresses pooled pleasantly at their feet as they bared their bodies to him. Alicent at least was wearing undergarments. Rhaenyra was not. Ugh! His wife-to-be stepped backward and beckoned to him with a seductive smile, fingers crooking his way in an unmistakably come-hither motion. "Won't you come to bed, husband?" "Don't call him that," Alicent murmured, taking hold of his left arm. "He isn't yours yet." Naruto looked her way, only to receive a searing kiss that swept his breath away. Was it getting hot in here, or was that just him? His head was spinning. "Oh?" Never one to be outdone, Rhaenyra seized his right, pressing her bare bosom against him before kissing him his cheek return. "Then you had best make him yours before I do." Alicent sputtered, flushed to the very roots of her auburn hair. "Rhaenyra." The Targaryen girl beamed. "I did tell you to be honest with yourself." Alicent made angry Alicent noises and buried her head into his arm. "Make her stop!" Naruto tried not to laugh. Really, he did. He just couldn't help himself. Gods, she was so adorable when she pouted. He really was a lucky guy, you know? Reaching down, he took her by the chin and nudged her face upward to gently capture her lips with his. Alicent stiffened for all of a moment. Then she closed her eyes, and he felt his heart soar as she all but melted into him, gently looping her arms around his neck, twining a leg within his. Rhaenyra made a vaguely displeased noise that sounded something like a cough. "Aren't you forgetting someone?" Alicent pulled away with a huff still mildly put out with her friend's antics. "I don't believe he is." Far from being offended, the princess only grinned anew. "I rather like this side of you." Naruto looked between the two of them and heaved a heartfelt sigh. What was a man to do surrounded by such temptation? Trapped between the two of them, he gave in. He let them lead him back to the bed. "The things we do for love. 0.0. You have my thanks for the information, Sir Criston." The Kingsguard in question bowed. "Of course, sir. It's time the boy paid a price." "Is that your only reason?" "I do not know what you mean, my lord." "Very well. We shall speak again on the morrow." Otto Hightower dismissed the knight with an errant gesture, idly watching him depart at a brisk pace. So easily led, these men of honour. How easy it was to manipulate them. That, or Cole, may well have a death wish. He wasn't entirely sure which. But he had more important matters to which he must attend. Bastards. 2 blasted bastards. Viserys sullied the Red Keep with such. No doubt he wished to further expand the crown's reach, or worse, raise a veritable army of his kin. How many more bastards would he snatch off the streets? No, this could not stand. The time had finally come then. It was sooner than he might have liked, but beggars couldn't be choosers. He must act. Otto sighed as he plucked a letter from his desk, sealed it with wax, followed by his signet ring, and turned the message over in his hands. After a moment's pause, he gave it to a messenger who would see it delivered. These words must be delivered on foot as well as wings. Maester Melos was due to return on the eve of Rhaenyra's wedding. They would have much to discuss, he knew, but that did little to dull the dread in his heart. He had agents throughout the realm, from Dawn to the Iron Islands, awaiting his command, ready for his command, awaiting his word. Word he was about to give. Otto did not relish this course of action. He took no pleasure in what he was about to do, what he would unleash. Alicent would surely hate him for this at first, but she would come to understand in the fullness of time. He did what he must, because he must. For the good of his family. For the safety of the crown. For the security of the realm. Perhaps, had he seen the clever trap the Targaryens had laid for him, he might have been more cautious. Alas, Otto Hightower made the mistake of many an arrogant lord had before him, and blundered right into it. Chapter 24. Embrace the dark you call a home. Gaze upon an empty iron throne. A legacy of lies. A familiar disguise. An unwitting reprise. Sing with me a song of conquest and fate. Tilda you all know. To be wed. Interlude of Alicent. The day of the wedding dawned with ringing bells and great fanfare. Lords and ladies came from every corner of the 7 kingdoms to congratulate the new couple. From the far-flung north even to distant Dawn. Many would be in attendance, nobles great and small, all brought forth at the king's call. Naruto hadn't seen any of them at all, at least not yet. He was far too busy having a panic attack in his quarters. Or was it chambers? Abode? Room? Bah! Westeros had far too many fancy words for the same thing. Best to say things plain, leave them simple and clean. Or so he would say if he wasn't so anxious. Downright terrified, really. He'd chalked it up to a case of nerves at first, but even that couldn't dismiss the stage fright he was feeling. He was usually pretty good with people, you know? A talker and all that, but he'd seen the crowds pouring into the Red Keep from his window up above, and that was a lot of people. His new attire certainly didn't help matters, nor did the mirror. "I feel like a stuffed goose." Nonsense. Alicent fussed over him with infinite patience, idly helped him adjust his attire. "You look like a warrior prince." He glared at a garish sleeve, frowning at the limited movement it allowed him. "In all this silk?" She arched a brow. "Rhaenyra told me of your deeds in the Stepstones. You'll be fine." "Yeah, but my sword." "Cannot be brought to the feast," she reminded him sternly, hand on hip. The lords and ladies of Westeros are already terribly wary of you and your sudden rise to fame. You know this. If you're seen arriving with a blade at your hip, many will think you mean to wreak havoc, if not outright violence. Alicent had a point there, blast her. Sometimes he really hated playing their rules. Not for too much longer now, but still, it rankled him. Just hang in there, Kurama soothed him. We'll show them, we will show them all. And that day couldn't come soon enough. He did not wish to be parted from his new weapon, but even he realized it would be poor taste to bring a blade to your wedding, least of all Valyrian steel. At least he'd finally settled on a name of sorts for the bloody thing the other day. That's right, his once nameless blade was nameless no longer. Henceforth it would be known as Guiding Moonlight. All right, he wasn't the best with names, you know. Still, it sounded better than Stonebreaker, Fateweaver, Moondreamer, or any other poetic name that didn't suit him. It was also something of a jest on his part. He'd had some very interesting nights since he first claimed this blade from the crab feeder, and it suited the blade's baleful blue glow. This was a weapon meant for killing, just like him. He'd cleaved countless men with it back in the Stepstones, and besides, he could hardly call it Foxfire now, could he? Folks were already calling him that. Wouldn't do to have a blade of the same name. You're just proud of the name, aren't you? I plead the fifth. Turn around, please. Alicent tutted gently, reminding him where he was as she adjusted his tunic. Let's have a proper look at you. Naruto reluctantly did as he was bade, only to pause when he saw the stranger staring back at him. Huh, he managed less than eloquently. Not bad. For the feast, he'd chosen an amber doublet, bordering on orange, and long, flowing black breeches bearing matching boots. A seamstress had stitched a crimson swirl, that of a whirlpool, at the right shoulder where the seam of the sleeve met his tunic, a subtle callback to the days he'd spent in his village. And draped around his throat like some sort ancient necklace, hanging from a black cloth, polished to a fresh shine despite all the nicks and scratches it had sustained, his headband gleamed back at him. He scarcely recognized himself. Rhaenyra would probably outdo him naturally. She always shone in whatever she wore. Alicent circled him once, thumbed her chin, then nodded her approval. I still don't understand why you refused a cape. He clicked his tongue at her in mild admonishment. No capes! None that he hadn't made out of chakra metal, at any rate. Anything less gave your opponents something to grab onto in a fight, and that was just asking for trouble. By that very logic, he knew he should probably get his hair cut soon, but he couldn't quite bring himself to do it. His tawny blonde locks looked good like this. Reminded him of Dad, you know? He'd keep it this way a while longer. Call him sentimental. Sensing the eyes of Alicent upon him, he decided to show off a little and pivoted, spinning on his heel. How's this, then? Better, she nodded, smiling ever so softly. You'll have all eyes upon you tonight. He sulked at that and kicked at the floor. I'd really rather not. Then you should have thought of that before you fell in love. He scoffed at her jest. Very funny. Really, it was nice of her to help him with this before the feast. She'd long since shooed the maids away, as they were too busy staring. Too many prying eyes, you know. Granted, her purpose here wasn't entirely altruistic. Far from it. Quite selfish, really. She'd confessed it directly to him as she helped him dress. He knew she was using him as a shield of sorts. An easy excuse to avoid her old man tonight when he would surely be prowling and plotting. That was fine. Yet again, that was just fine with him. He didn't mind being used for something like this. Some might say such an act would stain her in the eyes of the court. So what if it did? After tonight, it wouldn't matter. He looked lower, idly noticing her blue dress, simple though it was. You gonna wear that tonight? A unladylike snort escaped her before she could catch it, and she flushed. I will not. Oh? Now he was curious. No one had told him Alicent's role tonight, neither what she would be wearing or what she would be doing. She hadn't spoken on it, Rhaenyra insisted it would be a surprise, Irma had only chuckled, and Daemon had simply clapped him on the back. Small point in asking Hugh, or Ulf either, they were just as lost as he was. Viserys, for his part, had at least reassured him a little. Everything will be fine, my boy. Fine, he said. This felt like a prank. It had been a long while since some pranked him. He needed to check in on the Stepstones too. It'd be. Gin a bit. Shaking his head, he looked back to the shy redhead. Any chance I can see Rhaenyra before this shindig starts? You cannot. She batted him on the nose in a burst of boldness. 'Tis ill luck to see a bride before she is wed. His brow furrowed. But I'll be seeing her at the feast. Ain't that the same thing? That's different, she chided. Those are the festivities. Now do you remember the words you'll say during the ceremony? His brain blanked. Yes? That sounded like a question. He scratched a whiskered cheek and looked away. It wasn't? Alicent crossed both arms before her bosom and stared, heedless of his nervous smile. You're distracted. What is it? Nothing. She began to tap her foot. All right, all right. He flung up a hand before she could press further. Just overthinking things. Alicent stepped to him and took her hands in his. Such as? Stepstone stuff, he confessed. I can't help it. Her brow furrowed. Who was the man you left in charge again? Robut. He recalled after only a moment's pause. He was one of the slaves we freed. No idea why he was there, though. He probably could have broken out on his own. Still, I kept him on as part of my staff. He's pretty good at administration. Quick with a sword, too. I left Tiberius with him, so he should be fine, but I just worry. Alicent blinked. Tiberius? One of the settlers that sailed over from to help colonize my stepstones. He took his hands from hers and gestured expansively. Big fella, fast and strong. Really helped out with the Dornish incursions, so I hired him. He doesn't talk much, but he's got good armor, and he's a damn good fighter, you know. Enough to impress you? The Lady Hightower hummed at that. I think I should rather like to see him someday. Kurama choked on his own spit, and Naruto winced hard enough for both of them. His smile became a little strained. That might not be a good idea. She tilted her head, somewhat confused. Why ever not? You do not see Tiberius of the Red Wake. I'm afraid I do not follow. You do not see Tiberius of the Red Wake, he repeated. On the battlefield, he sees you. Then you die. Alicent gulped. I've changed my mind. I do not think I would ever wish to meet this man. Now where were we? The vows, he ventured aloud, desperately trying to change the subject. Yes, her head bobbed in wholehearted agreement, eager to move on. First, the High Septon will say these words. She paused, took a breath, and recited them. In the sight of the seven, I hereby see you, these two souls, binding them as one for eternity. Look upon one another and say the words. A silence followed. And the rest? Here you can practice with me. Ordinarily, you would take a quote and bring your betrothed under your protection, but you don't have one at the moment, so we'll have to make do. Naruto squinted at her. What do you mean? Of course I have a cloak. I always do. He conjured a shimmering shroud of golden chakra to his hands and draped it over her slim shoulders as one might a jacket back home. In his world. Alicent went very still and clutched it tight to herself. Odd. Her face was very red. Had he broken her? It's so warm. Good. She was all right. He beamed at her. What's next? She flushed and fished a green ribbon out from her sleeve and drew closer him. You take a ribbon, and you wrap your hands with that of another, the one with whom you wish to be wed. She did so with each of their right hands, creating a loose knot to bind them. Then you say the words. Ahem! Clearing her throat for good measure, she began. Repeat after me. Father. Smith. Warrior. Mother. Maiden. Crone. Stranger. He did as she did, careful to match each word in time with hers, memorizing each word. Father. Smith. Warrior. Mother. Maiden. Crone. Stranger. Good, she preened. Now for the last bit. I am hers and she is mine from this day till the end of my days. He repeated her. Alicent was even kind enough to speaking the words with him to help him along, matching him perfectly in her own way, as though she too was saying the same thing, swearing herself to him. With this kiss, I pledge my eternal love. He didn't miss the way her voice hitched a little as her eyes flitted up to his. The next part should be rather obvious, don't you think? She stood up on the tips of her toes to kiss him, and he met her halfway. Her lips lingered on his in a chaste kiss, setting a spark racing through him, brief though it was. And there you have it. A happy marriage. Alicent retreated half a step to hold up their intertwined hands, ribbon and all. A small smile dimpled her face as she sketched a one-handed curtsy, "Hello, husband." He dispelled the chakra cloak and laughed at her jest. Alicent dared a hysteric little giggle of her own. His eyes bulged. Wait a second. Even then, it took Naruto a moment to realize what he had inadvertently done, how she'd one-upped Rhaenyra. Granted, there wasn't a Septon in the room to officiate this so-called practice, but devious little thing. Rhaenyra was right. He liked this side of her. She'd laugh herself silly once she heard, and probably get Alicent back with a vengeance. What about you? He asked on a whim, mildly amused by the thought. You gonna enter the hall with me? Me? Alicent's face went redder than her hair, and she hurriedly unbound their hands before anyone else could see. That would be most improper. I shall join the two of you later. Her gaze flickered away from him. But only once I'm properly dressed. Aha! Realization dawned and he thrust a finger at her, triumphant. So you are wearing something different tonight after all. Yes, if you must know. She huffed unhappily, not pleased to be caught out. And that's all you shall hear from me. She muttered something else under her breath just then, speaking just a little too fast for him to hear. Naruto squinted at her. What was that? Othered, she said. He leaned in. I didn't quite hear you. My betrothed, she murmured, ears burning. I wanted to say it first, before Rhaenyra. Her words drew a smile to his lips and he couldn't help himself. He drew her into a fierce hug, tucking his chin over her shoulder. You really are cute when you're flustered. Alicent squeaked, but held her ground, stubbornly meeting his gaze. I have something else for you, if you don't mind. Her voice trembled ever so slightly. A gift. He released her, and in return she withdrew a masterfully embroidered handkerchief from the bodice of her dress. Tentatively she offered it to him. Naruto's brow shot into his hair. What is this? My mother was a Florent, she explained softly, voice little more than a sad A. Her sigil was that of a fox. As I am a Hightower no longer in the eyes of my father, I thought it prudent to take her symbol for my own once more. I had thought you might like it given your origins. A pause followed as she wrung her hands. Perhaps you could keep it close, as a token of my favor. My way of saying thanks for saving me. Naruto ran his thumb over one of the stitches, staring at the fox within. Do you like it? He did like it, much to his surprise. The Florent sigil was that of a red-gold fox on an ermine, that is to say, flowers etched in the background. He could see the effort that had gone into each and every stitch. It must have taken her hours to make, if not days. Needlework was something neither he nor Rhaenyra excelled at, just as another sign that Alicent preferred a more deft touch than most. I love it. Alicent's pale face lit up in a smile, one of her rare, real smiles. The sight made his heart flutter, a mad butterfly winging about his chest, rendering his every thought a merry haze. She was beautiful like this. Absolutely radiant. The setting sun shone through the window, caught her red curls and seemingly see them afire. For a moment he could see the woman she would be 10 years from now. A strong, proud woman who cast aside her concern and cowardice and truly came into her own. A man could get drunk on a sight like this. He liked what he saw. In this moment, more than anything, he wanted to kiss her eyes, drink that smile in for the rest of his days. His body betrayed him and he stepped into her, drawing her close. She responded in kind, nestled her head into his chest and held tight. There was nothing untoward about it. They simply held one another, basking in each other's presence in a rare moment of silent solidarity, one lost soul to another. I'm very glad I listened to Rhaenyra, Alicent whispered against his chest, distracting him. But I think I'm gladder still, having met you. So thank you. She lifted her gaze to look him in the eye. I dread to think what might have become of me had you not come along. His face went red for all the right reasons. We still have an hour, right? She nodded into him. We do. Well, that settled it. He dipped down and kissed her. She melted into him with passion, holding tight to him, hitching up her dress. A flick of his fingers waved a shadow clone toward the door, locking it. Then her hands were on his, and he had far more pleasant things on the mind. He practically carried her to the bed. Unfortunately, he landed awkwardly on the mattress, resulting in her all but falling atop him, pinning his body with her hips. Not so his hands. Alicent gasped out a breath as he lifted her into his lap, splaying her legs on either aid of him. We might be late. His mouth muffled hers in a kiss, allowing her to unlace his breeches. I don't care. You. Her words peaked into a pleased gasp as his hands settled on her hips and flank, guiding her home. You make a very convincing argument. Of course he did. Because now he finally understood. He loved her. He really did. Just as he did Rhaenyra. Alicent rolled her shoulders and her dress tumbled down her back, baring her bosom to him and most of her upper torso besides. Her hips ground against his, and he returned the motion as she planted her hands against his chest, the better to rock against him. Just like that they were off, falling into a familiar rhythm as they coupled. If this was to be their calm before the storm, then he would face it. With Alicent and Rhaenyra by his side, come what may. Chapter 25. There is nothing so dangerous in all the world as a wedding. Knives will come out, sooner or later. Just you wait. Tilda? The Black Wedding, Part 1. Rhaenyra hated waiting. She understood why she had to sit and wait for Naruto, of course. It was a necessity given the grand plan that father had concocted. But that didn't make it any less pleasant, least of all with so many eyes upon her. She felt like a caged dragon beneath their questioning eyes and liked it naught. Tonight she was clad in a new dress, much to her eternal chagrin, a bold shoulder-bearing design of menacing black ebony on amber cloth with stitched scales therein, the latter of which almost seemed to ripple with each and every movement in the low light. Truly a work of such intricate design as to make her old white dress weep. Her hair had been done up in even more intricate braids bound by rubies and dark crystals, the names of which she knew not, only that they were impressive. Impressive enough to demand near stillness on her part, lest she lay waste to all the hard work that had gone into preparing this outfit. Yet for all the majesty of her appearance, it did naught to conceal her anxiety or distract her from her own apprehension. For once it had nothing to do with the babe in her belly. No, this stress was made of far more menial means. She was nervous. Terribly stressed, really, as she sat at the high table watching the guests pour into the room. Her guests, she supposed. This was to be her wedding feast, after all. She was the one to whom everyone paid attention tonight. Gods, how that made her squirm in her seat, and not necessarily a bad way. In a sense, she'd gotten everything she ever wanted. All her plans had come to sweet, glorious fruition, with hardly a hiccup between them. By the night's end, she would have her heart's desire. One might even say things were going too well. Mother had warned her about the dangers of arrogance. It was precisely when one was at their highest point that they had the furthest to fall. She feared what destiny would demand from her for this. Surely there was a price to be paid for such sweet, sweet fortune. Yet those for whom she cared most were not yet here. Naruto and Alicent were late, which meant they were up to something. What if something had happened? What if something went wrong? What if... Mother nudged her with an elbow, breaking into her thoughts. Don't fidget. You'll ruin your dress. Rhaenyra glowed at her. I'm not fidgeting. Dear daughter, Emma quirked a brow at her. You look like you want to tear off that dress and stab someone. Of course she did, because she could barely move in this gaudy get-up. And to think this wouldn't even be the last dress she wore tonight. Subsiding with a sigh, she turned her gaze back to those below them. They had set forth a veritable feast in the throne room, a great mass of tables set before the steps leading to the Iron Throne, leaving gaudy dark wreaths hanging from the ceiling. Fire burned in crude black iron chandeliers above, casting dancing shadows about the world like pantomimes in a play. From the centre table she had a grand view of it all. A slew of massive tables were visible on either side of the throne room pillars, with more arranged toward the walls. Likewise, the guests of greater import were seated closer toward the main table, with Sir Harold announcing all who entered. She let her eyes roam across the guests, if only to steel her nerves. Sir Criston was far from the high table in tonight's guard rotation, curious and welcoming. She did not wish to see nor speak to him tonight of all nights. They'd not said a word to one another since their last altercation in the garden. He sensed her stare and glanced her way, prompting her to wrench her gaze away and glare elsewhere. No sign of the Valerians yet, nor the Hightowers for that matter. Likewise, the contingent from the Vale had yet to arrive. No surprise there, given what Demon had done. Perhaps they wouldn't show face at all. His marriage to Rhea Royce may have been a loveless one, but he must have offended a great many of the Valian lords by having it annulled. Father and the High Septon had seen to that. She supposed it was better than the alternative. Sir Harold raised his voice suddenly, commanding her attention. It is with great pleasure that His Grace, King Viserys, announces the start of the royal wedding celebrations. Well, that was it then, wasn't it? No escaping now. House Lannister with their lord, Jason Lannister, Lord Paramount of the West and Master of Casterly Rock. She watched with one eye as the swaggering lords strode in as if they owned the bloody place, richly resplendent in their red and gold. And then behind them, House Hightower with their lord, Hobbit Hightower. Beacon of the South, defender of the Citadel, the voice of Old Town, brother to the hand of the king. If memory served, This man was Otto's older brother, and the uncle to Alicent and her henceforth unseen brother Gawain. The serpent had many heads, it seemed. Perhaps it would be best if they all perished tonight. No, Alicent wouldn't thank her for eradicating her entire family. Some might blameless, but only some. How odd, then, that Otto had chosen to sit with his family tonight, not with them at the high table. And here came the Lannisters, or more aptly, Sir Jason Lannister, ascending the steps to their table to give his greetings. Mustn't stab the idiotic oaf. Many will call this an ill-suited match, father had warned her earlier. They will mock you, denigrate you, prod you for weakness. You must be strong. Congratulations, Your Grace. Lord Jason's every word dripped false sincerity. You have made a fine match for the princess. Must. Not. Stab. Thank you, Lord Jason. Rhaenyra was quite capable of defending herself, and looked his way as she did. I could think of no better man than Sir Naruto. The unsubtle jab at his pride made the man wince. She took some small petty pride in it, served him right. Perhaps sensing her scorn, the Lannister scoffed, tactfully towing the line between fealty and insouciance. Well? He glanced over his shoulder, arms spread wide. If this is only the welcome feast, I admit, I cannot imagine what you might have planned for the wedding. Demon made an amused noise, but said naught. My daughter deserved no less, father answered in his stead. Indeed, mother seconded him. Rhaenyra may well be the future queen someday. We wanted this to be a wedding for the histories. The Lannister lord blanched. I was led to believe Demon was the heir. Her uncle shrugged. Until such a time as I no longer wish it. Ha! And there it was. The first blow struck. Oh, where is Lady Alicent? Jason looked past them, avoiding the subject entirely. I had hoped to pay my respects. Rhaenyra's blood ran cold at his words. Why ask after Alicent? He'd never shown an interest in her before now. What was he plotting? Mother saved her with a smile, a dangerous, sharp sort of smirk that she seldom saw from her these days. I believe she is still readying herself for the celebrations. A pity. The Lannister lord scoffed, glancing her way. This is why men wage war, because women would never be ready for the battle in time. Stab him! Stab him! Father and mother laughed his words off. Demon rolled his eyes. Rhaenyra did not. In a fit of pique, she reached down, gripped her dress well above the knee, and tore it asunder, exposing her hidden knife. From there, she ripped her deadly dagger from the holster on her thigh, vaulted the table, and threw it at Jason with all her might. It flew straight and true, lodging itself deep within the Lannister lord's left eye to penetrate his brain. The hall fell deathly silent. Lord Jason stood there for a long moment, transfixed, swaying on his feet, balking, good eye trying and failing to blink miserably. His mouth parted to say something only to cough blood. It spattered across her face, but she didn't care. Rivulets of red ran down his chin. That was the final straw, and his body collapsed before them, like a puppet bereft of strings. Rhaenyra? She blinked and the pleasant daydream faded away, leaving her idly aware that she'd missed some of the conversation. Mother continued speaking, responding to something else she hadn't heard. We can expect your aid in the stepstones then, I trust? Lord Jason sputtered, incredulous. I beg your pardon? The stepstones, Demon chimed in with a smug smile. No doubt such a dauntless warrior as yourself would fare well there, against the Dornish incursions. Caught between pragmatism and pride, the Lannister lord faltered. To admit fear in this game was to admit defeat, as they all well knew. But the stepstones were not a place for the faint of heart. Even after all of Naruto's many and myriad efforts, there were still those who wished to possess them. Dawn chief amongst them, with the triarchy broken. Any forces Jason lent there would be under strict watch and would not soon return. Naruto might well convert them to his cause entirely, as he was so often known to do. What a convenient way to weaken one of their enemies. Well, yes, of course, he muttered, red-faced. I am ever at your disposal, Your Grace. Excellent. Demon was relentless. How many men can we expect from you? 5,000 seems an adequate number, wouldn't you agree, brother? Father hummed his agreement. A fine number indeed. It seems a sound proposal. Lord Jason practically choked on his own spit. 5,000? Demon tilted his head. Would you prefer 10? All the colour drained from his face. No. 5 is fine. 5,000. Demon repeated the latter for emphasis. Lord Jason made a pained noise. But of course, excellent. Rhaenyra smiled thinly, sealing the deal. Perhaps we'll see you there after our wedding. Your presence is always such a pleasure, Lord Jason. It was all but a dismissal. Tyland's brother slouched away, defeated, either unable or unwilling to risk him further. Rhaenyra watched him slink back to his vassals and idly imagined a knife lodging in the back of his head. She'd been practicing these last few nights. She was fairly certain she could make such a toss. The thought warmed her more than dragonfire. Father tutted softly as the Lannister lord fled. Must you bully the poor man? Yes, I must. Demon drank deeply before winking Mother's way. It is a need I cannot deny. Mother hid a smile behind her hand. Drums beat at the entrance, and Sir Harold called out the arrival of another great house as they arrived in glorious fanfare. Presenting Lord Corlys of House Velaryon, Lord of the Tides, Master of Driftmark, and his lady wife, Princess Rhaenys Targaryen, and their son and heir, Sir Laenor Velaryon. Rhaenyra perked up a little, straining to see over a great many heads as House Velaryon bowed to father. Laenor looked well. Word of his recovery had been true then. Good. She had feared for the health of her cousin after that debacle in the Stepstones. And was that little Lena beside him? Not so little now, she supposed. Oh no, not at all. No, bad Rhaenyra, she chided herself. Best not get greedy. She barely had time to process their arrival before Sir Harold declared another. Presenting Corin Martell of House Martell. His strong voice wavered only a little in concern as a swathe of brightly clad figures marched into the chamber. Prince of Dawn, Master of Sunspear, and his daughter, the Lady Aleandra Nymeris Martell, Strider of Sands. Rhaenyra went still, caught wholly unawares. They arrived just before dawn, father confessed in a whispered aside. It would have been rude to turn them away, she hissed at him. Are you mad? Their ships attacked ours in the Stepstones. Mother laid a hand on her arm. You destroyed them, did you not? And now here they are, asking for peace. No, it was suspicious, the timing too precise. Surely they realized that. This is a trick, a trap of some sort. They remain our enemies. Demon chuckled. Ah, but the enemy of our enemy may become a friend. The enemy of whom? The Hightowers? Or the Maesters? They were plotting something, surely. Weren't they? Mother patted her arm again, fingers stroking her shoulder. Peace. Naruto knows they're here. She certainly hoped so. If not, he was going to be terribly cross. There at the head of that great host, she glimpsed a tall, handsome man clad in robes the very colour of sunset itself. He had a strong jawline, dark hair and darker eyes. That, then, must be Corin Martell. He did not bow. Such were the words of his house. But he did incline his head toward father in a curt nod. Rhaenyra glanced past him. His daughter was very beautiful indeed. The king raised a hand in greeting and beckoned Corin closer. Be welcome. The so-called prince crested the steps briskly, alone heedless of the hush in the hall. You have my thanks for the invitation. Another nod, brusque and brisk, his eyes roving over the empty seats at the table. And my apologies for the lateness of our arrival. His gaze flicked back to father and Rhaenyra didn't like what she saw there. Where is the one you call Foxfire? I had very much wished to meet the monster who slew so many of my men in the Stepstones. He will arrive shortly. Viserys temporized with a raised hand. Prince Corin grunted, then finally noticed her. Princess? Prince? She raised her chin to meet his stare. My congratulations on your wedding. His head tilted just so, regarding her as one might a dangerous animal or perhaps a rival. You wore such wonderful armor in the Stepstones when you rode your golden dragon to burn my ships, yet here you are, in a dress. You play your part well, it seems. She couldn't quite hide her sneer. In truth, I would prefer armor. Give me a battle over the ballroom any day. Demon chuckled at that, and here at last Prince Corin smiled. On that we agree, Princess. Was he flirting with her? Surely not. Unless he was. How bold of him. Prince Corin gestured behind him, and a dazzling young woman with long, dark hair stepped forth from his retinue. May I introduce my daughter, Aleandra? The Dornish woman smiled at them, but like her father remained unbowed and unbroken. A pleasure to make your acquaintance, Princess. Demon sat a bit straighter in his chair, but much to Rhaenyra's chagrin, the newcomer seemingly only had eyes for her. And despite herself, the princess felt heat creep up the back of her neck. She wasn't accustomed to someone staring at her like that. Not even Naruto or Alicent had looked at her with such intensity. Not with anger or hate or even jealousy, but something else. Something she couldn't quite quantify, and it alarmed her. Korin had almost certainly come here for reasons she didn't understand, but his daughter seemed wholly fixated on her. Oh dear. Her fellow princess blinked once, long lashes fluttering in quiet curiosity. I understand you are something of a warrior. In training, she confessed with a flush of mild embarrassment. I'm not all that skilled just yet. Alejandra smiled. Perhaps we could practice together during my time here. Why did her face feel so damnably warm? I will consider it. Aleandra's bright gaze shone with heady triumph. Why did she have the feeling she'd just lost? Father coughed into a fist, freeing her from the strange woman's spell. The groom should arrive any moment now. Please be seated and know that none shall accost you. Nor shall any of mine harm yours during our time here. Korin inclined his head once more. I would sooner sleep with scorpions. Come, Alejandra. Together, the pair descended the steps and took their place at one of the many tables with their entourage. See, Mother preened. They're not here to make trouble. Everything will be all right. Rhaenyra wished it would be so. Now came the last announcement. Sir Harold raised his voice one last time to cut through the clamour. Presenting Lord Naruto of House Uzumaki, master of the Stepstones, friend of dragons, sage of the realm, and future husband to Rhaenyra Targaryen. There was a silence. None strode through those doors. And then, quite suddenly, something happened. With neither word nor warning, a localized windstorm swept into the chamber, buffeting a great many guests, the Hightowers and Lannisters in particular. From that huge hurricane, a thunderbolt lanced out and struck the chamber floor. Such should have been quite impossible indoors, to take on the shape of a man. Naruto. Rhaenyra recognized him at once despite his incandescent glow. His body shone like the sun, skin gleaming with golden black flame, his eyes red as blood, pupils wicked slits in the shape of a cross. He clutched a strange black-ringed staff in his offhand, and with but a tap of it, countless copies of himself appeared at his side, flanking him perfectly, nearly filling the room. Guests shrank back into their chairs and tables, but there was no danger. As one, the clones bowed with their master to honour the king. A startled murmur passed through the wedding guests, only to dissolve as he dispelled the doppelgangers and strode forward. The princess smiled despite herself. Naruto had no real household to his name, not yet, so he'd made his entrance the only way he knew how, with style. He walked her way with long, powerful strides, devouring the distance between them, and instinct took over. Rhaenyra rose from her chair, circled round the table and offered him her hand, just as he crested the final step between the two of them. My betrothed. He smiled as he accepted it and kissed the back of her knuckles, banishing his golden cloak with that simple gesture. My betrothed! The words sent a pleasant thrill through her. Applause arose, scattered and muted, but present nonetheless. Naruto drew her close for a moment, whispering in her ear. Where's Alicent? I thought she'd be here. She smiled, unwilling to give the secret away. You'll see soon enough, he frowned. You're up to something. Perish the thought, husband. 0.0. Perish the thought, husband. Ugh! It didn't affect him as badly this time, but Naruto still reeled a little, regardless, as Rhaenyra led him up to the high table. Naturally, she guided him into the empty seat beside her. He took it with a silent nod, keenly aware of all eyes on him. From his new vantage point, he could see Sir Harold closing the doors to the throne room, sealing the chamber. No sign of Alicent yet. Where was she? And what was she up to? And still, the guests stared. He didn't care. Let them think him a wizard or a sorcerer or a magician. With that little display, he'd more than made his point. Viserys rose and all sat. Be welcome, one and all. The king looked about for a moment, steeled himself, then began. Here in our hall, as we join together in celebration. Tonight is only its beginning. We honour the crown's newest and fiercest ally, House Uzumaki. Naruto felt heat creep up the back of his neck. How the heck did he count as a house when he was the only member of it? Still, he appreciated the gesture. He who has done what no other has, conquered the Stepstones and made them ours for all time. He thumped a fist down with vigour, rattling the table. We have not seen such strength of will since the days of old Valyria and the Age of Dragons. With House Targaryen and House Uzumaki united, I hope to herald in a second age of dragons in Westeros." Applause answered, but the old king wasn't finished. And after tonight's small affair, laughter followed and he joined with it. 7 days of tournament and feasting. At the end of it all, a royal wedding between my daughter and Sir Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto nearly choked. Was he a knight now, too? Since when? Come. The kind raised a flagon of wine to the heavens. Let us drink and make merry. The crowd applauded at that. He caught Otto scowling his way from the Hightower table and smiled his way. But first, Viserys smiled suddenly, a sharp and triumphant thing that instantly set him on edge. "I have a surprise for you all." With those words, the doors swung open wide once more, admitting a latecomer. Naruto sat up straight, squinted, and saw who it was. And just like that, he understood. Rhaenyra whispered into his ear. "Surprise." Alicent Hightower strode through the doors, hands clasped before herself. Everyone saw her dress, and it was most assuredly not green. The Hightower host nearly had a heart attack. Naruto damn near choked on his food. Alicent wasn't wearing the blue dress he'd seen only hours before. Oh no. She wore a long, flowing garment that trailed upon the floor, but he wasn't focused on that either. His eyes travelled upward, noticing the dress had left her slim shoulders bare before tapering down into a slit just near her bosom, secured by 3 golden clasps, enough to tempt it and tease, to excite and delight yet never revealing what truly lay within. From there the gown led into longer sleeves, intricately embroidered with the likeness of both dragon and fox, intertwined with one another. And the colour of said dress, you may ask? Red and black, shadow and flame, fire and of course blood. Well, if her loyalties hadn't been bloody obvious before, then they were now. Gone was that shy, shifting girl buried deep, her eyes fixed forward, focused solely upon him and Rhaenyra. Her every step was measured, her eyes staring straight ahead. Rhaenyra looked like she wanted to vault the table, jump her, weld her lips to hers and do things. Naruto couldn't blame her. Otto rose from the table and stared at his daughter, but he rose alone, as the rest of his family faltered, uncertain of what to do. Otto glared at her, and so too did Naruto behold the change that came over his once regal bearded visage. His face rapidly drained of colour, only for it to rush back in, turning his cheeks an ugly puce. As he looked on, the hand of the king pivoted upon his heel and stalked out. No one else noticed. They were far too focused on his dear daughter. Alicent paid none of them any need, not her father, nor uncle, nor brother, nor any of them. She didn't even glance his way as she walked by. Emma preened. "I told you she was preparing, did I not?" Naruto tried to speak, but the words lodged in his throat. He was. So damn. Proud of her. Alicent ascended the steps to the banquet table and moved to his side to claim the empty seat there. From there, she unbent enough to kiss Rhaenyra's cheek, followed by his own. "Hello, wife," she murmured to them in low, dulcet tones. "Hello, husband. You both look lovely tonight." Rhaenyra laughed a little despite herself. Against all odds, Naruto found himself returning it. Well, that was one way to make a statement, and sure enough, the wedding guests absolutely erupted.